Good evening. I would like to call to order the February 9th, 2026 Lake Washington School Board meeting. Let the record reflect that all board members are present, and we have two of our student reps, James and Suniri. The board values public participation and engagement in the meetings of the board. Board meetings will continue to be live streamed on the LWSD website and are available for viewing following the conclusion of the board meeting as well. The public are always welcome to email the board at boardmembers@lwsd.org. Vice President LaLiberty, would you like to read our land acknowledgements tonight?
The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District acknowledges that our district is on the indigenous land of the Coast Salish peoples, who have reserved treaty rights on this land, including the Duwamish and the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived here since time immemorial. We commit to continue collaborating with our Native community to teach the indigenous history of this land and these local tribes to all children of this district. We also commit to provide the best possible education for all children of Native descent who attend our schools.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion to approve the February 9th, 2026 agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
It has been moved by Director LaLiberty and seconded by Director Meekhoff to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
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 All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. The next item on the agenda will be public comment. The Board of Directors of Lake Washington School District welcomes the public to the business meetings of the board and encourages community engagement. The board dedicates 30 minutes to hear from the public during the public comment period of the meeting, with each individual provided up to 2 minutes to speak. Participants should not expect a response from the board at the end of their comments, as we dedicate this time to listening to your voice and would like to get as many members of the public an opportunity to speak as the time allows. If you have materials you would like distributed to the board, please leave them in the basket next to the podium. Each speaker will be called to the podium in the order of sign-up. A timer will appear on the screen showing your remaining time. When you have 30 seconds left, the timer will turn yellow to let you know you're nearing the end. When 10 seconds remain, the timer will turn red as a signal to wrap up your remarks. Please note that the microphone will be turned off shortly after your time expires, so we ask all speakers to conclude when their time is complete. I'd also like to remind everyone here this evening that this opportunity to engage in dialogue is also an opportunity to model respectful discourse to our students and our community. We ask that the audience refrain from commenting and from prolonged applause following each comment, as it takes up time and prevents us from listening to as many speakers as we can fit into our dedicated 30 minutes. Once the public comment portion of our business meeting concludes, we ask that everyone who is not interested in listening to the rest of the agenda items exit quietly and in an orderly fashion so that we can continue the rest of our meeting. Members of the public can sign up to participate on the district website. Sign-up closes at noon on the day of the board meeting, and comments will be offered in the order of sign-up. Speakers can designate another person to speak in their place in advance of the noon deadline, but speaker substitutions at the meeting unfortunately cannot be accommodated. As a reminder, the board does not discuss personnel matters at board meetings. Members of the community are encouraged to attempt to resolve issues with teachers, school principals, or other district personnel before bringing issues to the board. Additionally, speakers should refrain from naming students unless they are the parent or guardian of said student. Public comment will now begin at 7:05 p.m. The first speaker is Sushmita Srikant.
Hi, good evening. Did you watch the Super Bowl halftime show yesterday? We didn't need to understand a single word of Spanish to see how powerful storytelling through music can be. Coming from a trilingual family, that resonated deeply with me. My children don't need multi-language learner support. They need music class to be a place where they can learn actively and joyfully without relying on words at all. And as I look at my 5-year-old transitioning to public school this fall, I'm genuinely concerned. I'm even wondering whether I should keep him in private school because of the heavy smart screen use I'm seeing in elementary music. My name is Sushmita. I'm a Sandberg parent, the Director of Enrichment for Sandberg PTSA, and the VP of Advocacy for the LWPTSA Council. Last year, Sandburg had a thriving band program with around 40 students. When it was cut, families were told those funds would strengthen general music. But at the school level, we are not seeing any evidence of these reinvestments. As Director of Enrichment, I helped advocate for and hire an excellent middle school band teacher to run an after-school band program. 11 students are now participating, but families cannot rebuild a district-wide music pathway on volunteer efforts alone. For my family, this is personal. My 5th grader often comes home exhausted on music days from heavy use of smart screens and loud rhythms curriculum. One of his best memories was a combined 3rd grade choral concert at Juanita High, a reminder of how much students thrive when music is hands-on and community-based. And it's not just the classroom, even school-wide singing opportunities have been disappearing. Veterans Day, MLK Day assemblies, which traditionally included students singing, have been cut or scaled back. These are moments where children learn empathy, history, and community through music. Losing them matters. Our principal shared that our music teacher is only in her 2nd year and still in training. Meanwhile, kindergartners have watched full-length movies like Lion King and Wizard of Oz in music class at Sandburg, Robert Frost, and Redmond Elementary.
Please wrap up your comment.
Even if district-approved families would like to be asked for consent, and more importantly,
Please wrap up your comment. Thank you. The next speaker is Robert Rogno.
Lake Washington School District is operating a highly capable selection process that conflicts with numerous legal obligations, lacks basic fairness, and fails at identifying students most in need. I would like to know what the board intends to do to cure this and bring the district into compliance with the law. Fundamentally, the district has a positive obligation to assess, evaluating evidence, administering tests, or substituting documented professional judgment as they see necessary. The district cannot lawfully just declare insufficient evidence, refuse to assess, and deny services. Unlike other districts, Lake Washington never administers academic tests for identification. The district is required to consider a wide body of evidence and to allow data from parents and the community. Instead, the district refuses all evidence not from schools. The district pretends to have a homeschool path, but they refuse the state-required annual standardized assessments as evidence, won't test, and reject any such referral. OSPI guidance clearly expects newly enrolled students to be assessed within 3 months and to have services start the enrollment year. Lake Washington has no such process. A student enrolling without school-based data will need to wait years for it to accumulate. This isn't multiple pathways, this isn't even one. Lawfully, no single criterion disqualifies. For Lake Washington, non-school data does. COGAT under 98 does for Quest, a test only accurate within 3 or 4 points. Appeals are not optional. Lake Washington illegally refuses an appeal process for MPC decisions. The assessment process is predominantly not even written down as required. My son is 7 and not yet in school out of medical necessity. He has a 148 IQ and documented 99.9th percentile math and reading for 3 consecutive periods on the map the district requested and on Wyatt 4. The district wrote that they understand homeschool limitations and will accept our private standardized testing and our $75.
Please wrap up your comment.
They then unlawfully rejected, no evaluation, no appeal, because he hasn't been in school. Every student deserves a fair, lawful, basic education. Thank you.
The next speaker is Pehal Agarwal.
Good morning, board members. My name is Nada.
My name is Pahal. And my name is Neha. We're students here today who created and implemented a diabetes education program for middle schoolers. And today we're here to share why this education should be part of the district's health curriculum.
Diabetes is a chronic disease that affects how the body regulates body sugar, and it is becoming increasingly common in children and adolescents. What makes diabetes especially concerning is that it has many risk factors: diet, physical activity, and early symptom recognition, which are shaped during adolescence. Yet most students are not formally taught how diabetes works until much later, if at all.
We intentionally focused on middle school students because this is a critical developmental window. At this age, students begin making more independent choices about food, physical activity, and lifestyle, but they often lack the biological understanding behind those choices. And research shows diabetes diagnosis in youth are expected to rise significantly in the coming decades.
To address this gap, we designed an age-appropriate diabetes education lesson that combines science, interaction, and real-life application. By the end of the lesson, students could explain how diabetes works and identify at least one action they could take to reduce their risk or support someone with the condition. This shows that diabetes education at the middle school level is not only possible, but effective.
Students felt more confident talking about this topic, and teachers emphasized how well the lesson aligned with science and health standards while remaining accessible. Most importantly, students felt empowered with knowledge they could actually use.
Today, we're not just sharing a project. We respectfully propose that diabetes education be formally introduced in LWSD starting at the middle school level, either as a short health unit or an integrated lesson within existing science or health curriculum. Early education builds long-term health literacy, supports prevention and early recognition, empowers students to make informed choices, and reduces long-term health care and academic impacts associated with chronic illnesses.
When students understand why their choices matter, they are more likely to make healthier ones. By teaching diabetes education earlier, LWSD has the opportunity to proactively support students' well-being.
Thank you for your time, your commitment to student health, and for considering how early education can create a lasting impact.
Next up is Whitney Lee.
Good evening. My name is Whitney Lee, and I'm a parent in this district. I'm here to speak about safety, communication, and equity based on my family's experience. In 2022, my older daughter experienced bullying at Kirkland Middle School that escalated and ultimately resulted in her being disciplined instead of supported. That experience deeply affected our family's trust. This year, my younger daughter experienced another breakdown in communication and support. Before the school year began, I clearly requested that I be contacted via phone regarding any disciplinary or safety concerns so that communication would be timely and clear. That communication did not happen, and events unfolded without the partnership I had asked for. We met with administrators on November 25th and again on December 19th to address concerns and try to rebuild communication. Despite those efforts, my daughter does not currently feel safe returning to the building. Education is very important to our family, but safety and emotional well-being must come first. I also want to speak to equity and school climate. Equity is not only reflected in policy, but in everyday interactions with families. Something as simple as being acknowledged or greeted when entering a school building matters. When concerns about the environment are raised and explained away rather than addressed, it can reinforce the feeling that families are not fully seen or welcome. I also want to note my daughter has had an active IEP, and with that comes responsibility to ensure communication, support, and follow through that meets her individual needs. I'm also speaking for other families, especially African American families who may not have had the time, resources, or confidence to challenge decisions or seek alternatives. Some families simply withdraw, exhausted by systems that knowingly or unknowingly can contribute to patterns that push students away rather than support them. I recently saw district information showing declining enrollment. Families don't leave lightly. When students feel unsafe and families feel unheard, they begin to consider leaving. My family is now facing that decision. I am not just here for my daughter. I'm here because every student deserves to feel safe. Every family deserves to be heard. And equity should be something we could see, not just something we read in the mission statement. I'm asking for clear communication practices, especially direct phone communication regarding safety or discipline, greater accountability, and a stronger commitment to student safety and equitable engagement with families. Thank you.
Next up is Angelica Graham.
My name is Angelica. I'm a healing justice organizer and hate crime advocate with Eastside for All. For the past 3 years, I've directly supported Black and brown students and families within the Lake Washington School District, responding to incidents of hate crimes and bias incidents. These incidents have deeply eroded our families' sense of belonging and safety. Black and brown families do not feel safe sending their children into school environments where racial violence, isolation, bullying, and targeted punishments are consistently reported and inadequately addressed. When these concerns are formally brought to school leadership, they're met with delay, deflection, and complete inaction. In many cases, leadership fails to respond at all. When action is taken, these families are met with delays and failure to resolve or repair harm. There is no shortage of the district's public statements expressing commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but what has been absent is the follow-through. I was invited to provide services in response to a serious incident of racial violence at one of the high schools. There was a huge response with the students who were eager to resolve the racial conflict, but despite multiple attempts to coordinate next steps, I did not receive further communication from the school, and the work was left incomplete and unpaid for. This decision neglected the needs of the students who were brave enough to participate in the repair process that the district failed to sustain. The silence is a response. The withdrawal of support is a response, and the students hear it, and so do I. I'm asking the Lake Washington School District to work directly with students and families affected by these incidents to disrupt these patterns. About 2 years ago, the Lake Washington School District Equity Team finalized an equity policy that Eastside for All was part of, but it must move beyond paper. It must be fully implemented and enforced and embodied in the school culture, including a clear hate crime policy and response that centers the safety, dignity, and care of Black and brown students and families. Thank you.
Next is Alicia Kim.
Good evening, members of the Lake Washington School District Board. My name is Alicia Kim, and I am the Vice President of ACT, the AAPI curriculum team. I'm a student from North Shore School District, and I'm here today because ACT's mission extends beyond a single district. We are speaking at multiple school districts to advocate for more accurate and inclusive representation of Asian American and Pacific Islander histories across public education. ACT is a student-led organization advocating for more accurate and inclusive representation of Asian American and Pacific Islander histories within our curriculum. In districts across this region where a significant portion of students identify as Asian or Pacific Islander, many students grow up rarely seeing their communities reflected in what they learn. For many of us, our identities appear briefly or not at all within years of schooling. This is not about adding unnecessary content. It is about correcting gaps. When students are taught a partial version of history, it affects engagement, belonging, and understanding. Education should reflect the students it serves. And right now, AAPI experiences remain largely invisible in K-12 education. This invisibility sends an unintended message about whose stories matter. Asian American history includes immigration, labor movements, civil rights activism, exclusion laws, wartime incarceration, and cultural contributions that directly shape the United States. These are not side stories. They are foundational to American history. Leaving them out does not just affect AAPI students, it leaves all students with an incomplete and less accurate understanding of the country they live in. When curriculum reflects real histories and lived experiences, students feel more connected to what they are learning, more respected in the classroom, and more prepared to engage with the world around them. Addressing these gaps is an important step towards academic accuracy, student belonging, and educational equity. Thank you.
Next up is Meera Ranganathan.
Good evening, board members. My name is Meera Ranganathan, and I'm a concerned parent of a kindergartner at Discovery Community School, which shares campus with Carl Sandburg Elementary, Finn Hill, Kirkland. While I value our district's commitment to music, I'm here to address a significant gap between the Lake Washington School District music standards and the daily reality in our classrooms. Currently, we are seeing a trend toward passive screen-based instruction. Our youngest learners are spending valuable class time watching videos of songs and rhymes rather than engaging in communal vocal experiences. Music for 5- and 6-year-olds should be felt and heard, not just viewed on smartboards and screens. Furthermore, I want to highlight these 3 critical areas of concern. Number 1, active singing and instrumental access. According to the LWSD music scope and sequence, students should be engaged in active singing and needs hands-on exposure to playing classroom instruments to build foundational skills. Performing standards. Performing is a core district standard, yet these opportunities in the form of concerts have been notably absent this school year. Consistency. As the district has shifted away from before school elementary band, the quality of in-school music becomes even more vital. We are seeing a disparity in how these programs are implemented across different schools within the same school district, LWSD. We need to ignite the music spark now during these formative years. I request a formal review of instructional practices at Discovery and Carl Sandburg schools. I urge the district to provide our teachers with the necessary support, whether through specialized training, peer mentoring, or field visits to other schools, to ensure our program is active, tactile, and high quality. Let's ensure that music for all means vibrant, hands-on learning for every student in LWSD. Thank you for this opportunity.
Next up is Sudeep Pasarkonda.
Hi, my name is Sudeep, and I'm from the Bellevue School District. Along with Alicia, I'm also part of ACT, the AAPI curriculum team. Continuing off of Alicia's point, expanding AAPI curriculum also brings clear academic and community benefits. Research from districts similar to ours show that when students see their identities reflected in coursework, attendance improves, participation increases, and learning becomes more meaningful. Students are more likely to engage when the material feels relevant and truthful. AAPI curriculum strengthens critical thinking by expanding perspectives beyond traditional Eurocentric narratives. It encourages students to analyze history through multiple viewpoints, understand systemic inequality, and make connections between past and present. These are essential skills for higher education and informed civic participation. In a region like ours, where global industries and diverse communities are the norm, cultural literacy is essential for preparation for college, careers, and civic life. Students must be prepared to understand the histories and experiences of the people they learn alongside every day, especially in workforces and communities shaped by diversity. Students are already advocating for this learning. Local surveys show strong interest in Asian American studies, making this a student-driven need rather than a hypothetical one. We are not asking for immediate large-scale change. We respectfully ask the board to begin conversations around AAPI curriculum integration, support pilot programs, and encourage collaboration with educators interested in inclusive curriculum development. Thank you.
This concludes public comment. Thank you to those that participated and attended to engage with the board. As we move forward with the meeting, if you decide to remain at our meeting, we ask that all attendees are respectful and honor standard meeting protocols. Keeping side conversations to a minimum and voices at the lowest level possible is expected of all attendees. If you decide to leave at this time, please do so in an orderly and quiet manner so the board can continue their business meeting. Again, thank you for coming and participating in the meeting this evening. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the February 9th, 2026 consent agenda. I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Seconded.
It has been moved by Director Yoakum and seconded by Director Richter. Superintendent Holman, will you please poll the board?
Yes, I will. Director Yoakum?
Yes.
Director Richter?
Yes.
Director Meekoff?
Yes.
Vice President La Liberty?
Yes.
And President Guthrie?
Yes, motion carries. Superintendent Holman, will you review the donations?
Yes, I will. And so tonight the board has over $54,000 in donations in your packet, coming from Rose Hill PTSA, Lake Washington High School PTSA, and then the Gridiron Booster Club from Lake Washington High School. So I want to thank those three entities for their support of our schools and programs.
Thank you. Dr. Holman, do your staff have a legislative update?
I do. I'm pulling that up as we speak. Okay, so as the board knows, we are in the full throes of this short session. I believe today marked halfway through the session already, if you can believe that. And so as we think about advocacy efforts and the like, it feels like a very short timeline to get some of these things across the finish line. But we'll continue our work. And so as we think about what today was, today is the fiscal committee cutoff. And so any bills that have not advanced out of committee, they are considered dead. More will drop off next Tuesday. The floor cutoff is Tuesday, February 17th, meaning if things haven't come to the floor, that's another big day. And so if there is a bill that is necessary to implement the budget, it can be revived. But in this session, I doubt there's many bills that are going to be required to be able to implement the budget. Both education committees have prioritized bills with no or low fiscal impact. That is exactly what we heard from our legislators when we met with them. And so we know that there's fewer bills that have significant consequence. When we see the bill language, this board knows that one of our biggest asks is if you're not going to increase revenue in some very specific areas, please don't pass unfunded mandates, because with every good idea, a lot of times those come with added costs, staff times, and things like that. And so we know that there's some bills that we've been advocating for, curriculum proposals, MSOCs, so increased in material, supplies, and operating costs. The legislature removed what was called the transportation safety net last year. That was for overage costs for required transportation programming. I believe that was, north of $250,000 for Lake Washington School District that went away last year. And so we continue to track, items of importance. A couple of highlights. House Bill 2160 and Senate Bill 5883 related to School Employees Benefit Board. That was a bill that was set to expand benefits to more substitutes than are currently qualified. The cost of that for Lake Washington was about $1.5 million, and so we were not advocating against the bills. We were advocating for the funds to be able to pay for that bill. And so, as you can see here, it did not advance out of committee. The sales tax on services issue, this was a revenue package that was passed at the end of last year's legislative session, and it was intended to support schools as one of the key drivers, yet school districts were, the sales tax was applying to school districts for Lake Washington. Again, this was about a $1.3 million cost that, in kind of a really strange cycle, many of the costs we also can recoup through a special education safety net process. And so it was like we were being taxed, then we would ask the state for reimbursement for the money that we just sent to the state. And so Rep. Berg did introduce House Bill 2257 to codify guidance around last year's sales tax on service increase, but was amended to include an exemption for schools, and so we're continuing to track that. Front funding of capital levies. This is our third year advocating for this. This is one of those areas that it is no cost for the state, and so this would save our community significant dollars, seeing that we just passed a capital construction levy. And if we could access those funds earlier, not only would kids be in those classrooms sooner, it would save us in construction escalation or inflation costs. And so we've been told that it will receive a hearing next week, and I will continue to follow up on that all week until I see it on an actual agenda. And so that's an important one for us. And maybe on the lighter side of things, the blunt-nosed six-gill shark has been, well, it's in a bill designated as the official Washington state shark. We just found that very in the world of things that are very important, that this was something that was being debated and given time in Olympia. So it's a rather large shark. There was a 7-year-old that testified in Olympia related to this, and so anyways, there's a lot of things going on, but this we found a little bit more lighthearted than most issues that we're talking about in Olympia. So more to come. A lot of advocacy efforts that are extremely important and impact not only Lake Washington but districts all across the state.
Just one clarification on 1796. It passed off the House floor, correct? So when you say that the floor cutoff is next week, that's out of the House of Origin.
Yes.
So it's safe to continue moving forward. We're not, it's not impacted, for example,
Correct.
by the two deadlines you just mentioned. I just
Correct.
wanted to clarify that. Good. All right, the first item on the agenda is a CTE update. Dr. Holman.
Yes, and so it's been a couple years since we've had a CTE update. We're in the throes of the month that recognizes career and technical education, and so the team is here to provide an update. And so, Dr. Rose, I don't know if you're going to introduce the team, but we have a crew of folks here tonight.
Yes, absolutely. This is really timely as far as an update for thinking about career and technical education as we think about the R1 progress monitoring that's next, and thinking about student graduation rates, thinking about our student profile, thinking about student voice and engagement in relevant learning, like thinking about a presentation from our student reps. This presentation is really timely. And so wanted to introduce Director Nyla Fritz, Jill Brown, and Kate Advars to come up and share an overview of the program, plus some highlights and some of the really thoughtful work they've done over the past few years as we think about the shifting larger global context and then the shifting context in Lake Washington. So come on up, team.
Thank you, Dr. Rose, and thanks for letting me be a doctor for a short minute. I am not. Well, yes, we are here because we really wanted to have the chance to give you an update and just celebrate the incredible work of our CTE educators and our students who are involved in our CTE courses and CTSOs. Well, don't worry, I'm not going to alphabet soup you. We'll do descriptions of all of this. Let me here we go. There we go. We want to just take a second to center the department mission of CTE, College and Career Readiness, with our Lake Washington's mission and our belief that we want all of our students prepared for college, prepared for the global workplace, and prepared for personal success. We also are excited that we're celebrating today. I think a couple people stole my thunder when I was going to make a Seahawk comparison, but there is so much to celebrate. And so we're going to go over a few things with CTE kind of from a 30,000-foot view. And then we have tons of things on the slides for you that we're not going to talk about all of them, but just provide some highlights for you all. So first of all, what is CTE, Career and Technical Education? It's really important to know that when we talk about CTE, we are not talking just about a class or a course. We're really looking at career exploration, leadership development, academic achievement, and preparation for college and careers. That a well-rounded CTE program has all of these components. And one of the real focuses and then the important piece is ensuring that we are taking our students and really opening up the world post-high school for them. But that's important that we start in middle school and in high school for them to say, what am I really thinking about? You ask a lot of kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you'll get the answer of doctor, teacher, lawyer, or professional athlete, because those are the things they see. But man, think about all that had to go on for the Seahawks to win this weekend. There were athletic trainers, there are business folks in the business office, there are graphic designers, all of these things that we want our students to really have their interest piqued and think about what is beyond. I see some head nodding over there from some of our students, which so let's take a look at why CTE works. These are just some statistics that we pulled down for you. Really noticing that our students who are in, it's called a concentrator, and that just is a really weird way to describe it, but it's basically, if I'm a student who takes 2 or more courses within a pathway, the chances of me graduating on time, going on to a high-wage, high-skilled and high-need job, going into post-secondary, either training or college of some sort, is so much more likely. And so we really are looking to build these pathways that allow our students both those skills and that agency to move forward. Also notice we are hoping to empower our CTE, our students in these CTE courses. We pulled out some of these should look familiar to you, these mindsets that we really want to bring forward in our students. Perseverance, adaptability, agency, curiosity, and acceptance. One of the very strong pieces of our CTE programs are the CTSOs, which are the Career and Technical Student Organizations that are extensions of the learning in the classroom that our students get to participate in. You may have heard of DECA or HOSA or FBLA. All of these are programs, are clubs, organizations with our students that they get to be in the learning that they do and what they produce in this. Boy, it is amazing. And if you were to ask a lot of students down the road, what did you remember at high school? You'll often hear, oh, I remembered going to TSA. I remember doing this. Those are extensions of the classroom, but it's the ability for the student to then, in a real-time setting, with their own agency, with collaboration with their peers, show what they can do. And as we, as a CTE department, work with our program advisory councils, what we hear from industry is these are the skills that they want, and that these organizations that are an extension of the classroom allow our students to really have these skills moving in. Yes, we want the academics, and then how are we applying what you're learning? So, let me go forward here. We have 6 real buckets that our courses rest in: agricultural and natural resources, business and marketing, health sciences, human services, skilled and technical trades, and then the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And in just a minute, we're my team and I, we're going to be talking about each of these, but we're just going to give you a sort of a highlight. What is going on within this program area? And then what is something we're really looking forward to? Because as we design our courses and think to the future, we want to make sure that we're addressing the gaps. Where do we see things that are coming from industry saying this is a huge need? What used to be a need that is no longer as much of a need? And are we still providing exploratory courses, even if they are not fully in a pathway? Because sometimes exploration is really important. Okay, so I am going to pass this on to Kate Advars.
Thank you, Lila. I am very excited to talk to you about 4 of our programs that we have in our district. The first one is Agricultural Science and Natural Resources. Our teachers have been doing a deep dive into this program area, utilizing input from our amazing industry partnerships with sustainability ambassadors, FEMA, and Cascade Water, to name a few. We are excited to be growing this program in the areas of human impact, climate change, and sustainable energy with AI, and most recently, we are going to be bringing in an advanced restoration ecology class in the upcoming years. In our skilled and technical sciences, with AI, smartphones, social media, all of these have had an incredible, you can imagine, influence on every single course in this program area. Our teachers are up for the challenge. Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, InDesign, etc., all have now AI features built into it. And so what our teachers are doing are adapting their curriculum to better model the latest, greatest, updated tools in the workplace. Next year is our program focus year, and we are excited to continue to grow and enhance this program with definite highlight of attending the Adobe Max conference in the fall. In our health sciences, skills developed from courses in this program lead to careers in the health sciences where students can work in hospitals, labs, clinics, therapeutic centers, and even out on our football field as athletic trainers in training. Our teachers utilize virtual clients through the Anatomage tables and virtual reality headsets, along with clever adaptations for students to practice their skills, including, like what this picture shows, dissecting pumpkins around the Halloween time, doing cell salads, crocheted intestines as a textile way of experiencing some of the systems of the human body, drawing blood from, well, juice from oranges, and especially we partner with our technical theater to do stage makeup scars and practice stitching them up. So quite a lot of fun hands-on activities that the students can take those skills and bring them right to the workplace if that's a career they're going into. Knowing that there will always be jobs in the health sciences, AI can't take those away. We are excited to be developing a course called Introduction to Healthcare Occupations, and also we are looking into advanced health science research projects in this area. In our human services, teachers have been collaborating on projects and activities both inside and outside of school that focus on, quote, caring for communities, service learning, including early childhood development, teacher education academy, culinary arts and nutrition, and personal and professional readiness. Nyla was mentioning about getting our kids ready for the future employability skills, and this is where you can really see this come into place. We are looking forward to incorporating a class called Life, Money, and You into our middle schools. 3 out of our 8 schools are incorporating that next year, along with, of course, 21st century skills, employability skills, to increase financial literacy and prepare them for the future. And I'm going to hand it back to Nyla.
Thank you. And those are all areas that Kate, as a program specialist, gets to support. And our other program specialist is not here today, so I get to speak to her, the areas that Royce badly supports. Business and marketing, where if you hear DECA, this is where we get so many of our students involved in this. Our teachers have worked with members of our community to update courses and curriculum to reflect the changes happening in this field. Teachers are now adding units in how AI is used in business, such as changes in advertising, accounting, human resources. And I just got to say that's a lift for our teachers as they are building it in their classes as it is changing rapidly outside. Like most huge innovations, there are shifts that are happening very quickly. Students hear from guest speakers that further discuss changes occurring in the field and how to prepare for success. A real highlight in our business and marketing is the strong DECA programs, which average about 200 to 300 students at our larger comprehensive high schools. And last year we had 160 of our Lake Washington students qualify for DECA Nationals, which is really incredible. At Nationals, we also had several students receive top honors competing against 20,000 other students. Next year, we are really excited about a course, Advanced Placements AP Business. This is a brand new course launched by the College Board, and we are piloting it at one school. Because it's so new, we want to do a pilot, see how it works, ensure that it is intended to be a very accessible AP course. And so we're going to pilot it at Juanita, and then hopefully the following year, see if that goes into our other schools. We have several teachers who will be going to a training that we are a part of with Bellevue School District to look at what this course will look like. So super excited about that. And then within computer science, we've got some really fun stuff going on in the computer science world. And as we've mentioned, with changes in the computer science industry, our teachers and we are having to really say, okay, what do we need to do to shift? So we're responding by evaluating our curriculum and courses. After several meetings with our local computer science and higher ed advisors, our teachers are developing more units around AI learning, cybersecurity, along with the skills of problem solving and collaboration, which we are hearing from our industry partners that they have students that or people entering the workforce really, really good at knowing things, not necessarily as skilled with how to persevere, problem solve, move forward, and collaborate with others. And so really saying, how do we continue to build those skills? And we have a new course. This is, again, a brand new course that has started called AI Foundations, and we will be launching that at Juanita. And then there's another new course, AP Cybersecurity, which is actually was piloted this year, starting next year. The curriculum for it is not as strong yet, so we're waiting a year. We're going to let a few other districts see what that looks like until it has a stronger curricular base before we add it into our programs here. And then within our STEM, engineering, materials, engineering, robotics, and material science, based on the meetings with all of our different employers, again, we really appreciate our program advisory council members because they bring in what they need from us. So a highlight is, again, ensuring that in these pathways that they are incorporating AI learning. And then there has also been a revised pathway for our courses next year. Our teachers worked together and also got a lot of feedback to say, how are we switching and responding to what the needs are? So we adjusted that first year course, and then we have these other new second year courses that are at our different schools that provide that really strong pathway.
Okay, we're switching gears a little bit to talk about how we can wrap all of these ideas together and think about having our students really see themselves in post-secondary learning environments. CTE can get them there. So when we talk about dual college credit, I want to explain what we mean by that. Dual credit is providing our students with the potential to earn high school and college credit at the same time by completing a course or taking the corresponding exam. Equivalency credit is a bit different. Through CTE, we can provide students the opportunity to meet the learning standards of a specific course subject area while they're earning credit for that CTE course. We refer to this a lot as a 2-for-1, and common examples for students include photography, where you're going to meet your CTE requirement and fine art at the same time. This frees up space in a student's schedule for additional coursework that they're interested in, and it's especially important when we look at the 6-period day. With nearly 50 courses up on that list available to our students, these CTE programs support what our industry partners want. Today, 2/3 of all jobs require some kind of post-secondary training or education. Taking a dual credit class is connected to higher high school graduation rates, college enrollment, and degree completion. This is a jam-packed slide, so humor me if you want to look over it in more detail, but I'm going to give you the highlights. Our students and staff benefit from our business and community partnerships. The Washington Alliance for Better Schools works with our team to find relevant and engaging experiences with local businesses. I would say we, but I am particularly excited about a field trip we have with Emerson and Lake Washington High School that's coming up. We're going to KEXP to have an in-studio experience on the Climate Pledge Arena campus. So the news director from the LW Broadcast Communications class is actually going to join us and do a story with their video lead, posting it later on the program's YouTube channel. So something you can check out. In other exciting news to share, we continue to work with our partners at the Kirkland Chamber, and they recently allowed us to nominate and select a 2026 recipient of the Lee Johnson Family Community Service Scholarship. Our student will be honored later this week at the Woodmark Hotel. And last spring, we started a new relationship with Honeywell Industries, and this continues to grow. I'm pretty excited to share that we had 7 teachers and staff visit their accelerometer production facility that we have in Redmond. And this summer, they're going to be offering 3 competitive paid internships in engineering for Lake Washington School District students specifically. So that's pretty great. Again, another text-heavy slide. So in my role, it's really about bringing some of these things home for our students. And the High School and Beyond plan, it's a graduation requirement. Previously, each district in our state would select a platform of their choice. We use Zello to develop their own scope and sequence. The state is now providing all districts a common platform with a formal scope and sequence for grades 7 through 12. So we are launching that in the fall of 26 with a real opportunity to build alignment, increase whole school engagement, and meaningful activities and lessons that build towards a vital High School and Beyond plan. This renewed focus also supports students in gaining understanding and agency related to course selection. Intentional planning can make the difference for some graduating on time. The CTE sequence is something I want to highlight. This is a very viable option for students seeking an alternative to standardized testing. Counselor tracking tools have been built by our data team, and students can now link a sequence of 4 semesters of credit to fulfill their graduation pathway requirement. It's notable that the class of 2025, 75% of our students met that sequence naturally, but we also had 11% of our students have their math pathway satisfied through those courses, which is very important when we talk about the R1. Financial aid is a focus of our state legislature, and it is tied to the new funding for High School and Beyond plan as an accountability around the education we provide students. This shift is going to help many students and families realize the dream of post-high school training at whatever level, from a certificate program at Lake Washington Tech to a degree at a public university. Helping our community make informed choices regarding these systems is paramount. Lastly, I want to do a shout out to our college and career centers. These really can be the hub of our schools. We are working to strengthen our collaboration with counseling departments and staff to revitalize these spaces and connect to the diverse needs and interests of our students. In March, our teams will be taking students to the Washington Council's college planning event at UW-Bothell, where approximately 25 state institutions will be represented.
Okay, and we said we're here to celebrate. Let's celebrate this. These are the number of students who have had a seat in one of these courses. Now, when you see 9,774, that is not that many unique students. It's how many seats they had how many of them were sitting in CTE courses. When you just heard us talk about all of the important things that our CTE courses provide and that our CTE teachers are committed to ensuring their courses provide, this is a lot to celebrate. The other thing that is important to bring up, which the next slide, I did the celebration slide first because a big question that came up, and we knew this was coming, when we went down to a 6-period day, there was the concern and the curiosity, what impacts will this have on especially our elective courses? So we wanted to make sure that we did share that yes, when we lost 1 period of the day, that is one fewer period that students can take a CTE course. And we also want to say how strong our programs still are. When you look at our CTE programs right now and looking at other districts that have a 6-period day, we're doing great. And we're going to continue to monitor this and ensure that any courses that we're bringing in or any shifts that we're making are at the core, providing those opportunities for our students to have these successes. So with that, thank you, and thank you for celebrating our CTE students and educators. And do you have any questions?
Director Meekhoff? Did you have a question? You're all looking at one another.
Yeah. I didn't have a question, but I just had a statement, in my mind right now, I'm tying this a lot to the study session that we just had on the student, experience. And I think something that you brought up, James, in terms of future ready, it looks different for every student. But in terms of that absenteeism and engagement, when she's talking about that students who struggle with school attendance and engagement benefit from a CTE course, it's oftentimes they're interested and they're engaged in that material. So I think there's a lot to be said about broadening that in terms of all classes being engaging and, the student feedback.
Director Yoakum. James.
I want to first say, based on our presentation, I really appreciate this presentation about CTE because I think it's really important to a student's education. What I want to ask is, especially because of how big DECA is inside of our school district, inside of what I've seen, most of our schools, is there a reason why we picked Juanita as our pilot program for the AP Business course, and if there's a possibility to extend it to another school?
Yeah, there are. Is there a feeder pattern where there may be more growth? And that is one. And that was the predominant reason, saying, how do we build this program here at Juanita? And so we're looking at that predominantly. Mm-hmm. Great question, James. Thanks for asking that.
Now, Director Yoakum.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is helpful to understand, is also just helping my 9th grader register for his 10th grade classes and going through the CTE. Okay, you need credits here. What are we going to do? Question, I quickly pulled up all the agricultural classes. I operate a farm, so I was very curious about that. If we remove AP from there, we have 4 classes at Lake Washington, 1 at Eastlake, 1 at Redmond, and none at Juanita. So when we're looking at that graph where students are in CTE classes, like that Juanita 41, are those all AP students? They're in AP. It's the AP class, correct? So, and also, thank you, that was one question. And then also, why is that the case? I'm curious, the discrepancy between...
So many different reasons, but yes. I can answer that for a few. One is, if you were to ask that same question in my hometown of Moses Lake, Washington, that would be one of the highest CTE program areas, because it really is looking regionally where are those high demand, high wage, high skill jobs that are necessary. And our ag programs just they are not as high demand in our area in terms of workforce and also demand by students. So we can offer courses, and if they don't run, meaning I can't run a class of 20 students, and if we don't have a strong program that leads them somewhere, we're just probably not going to see that grow as much here. And again, the converse is depending on which area you go to, which district, those numbers look very different.
So does that mean for for hyper-local, there's more interest at Lake Washington High School versus just down the road at another high school? Or is it more building capacity, staff interest, student interest there, or the program's been built up over time?
Yeah, I would say yes. Yes. Yes to all of that. That's why I say there's so many different, in the same way that you could see, we had people here talking earlier about the music programs. We see schools in everywhere. There might be a really strong one at one school. Sometimes it is teacher dependent, or what that looks like within that community, very hyper-local.
I ask another quick question on that, and maybe more towards Dr. Holman? When we looked at our moving to 6-period day and making it a consistent schedule, was part of that to potentially allow students who maybe are at, was it Juanita, that there are no agricultural classes, but to be able to have that consistent schedule of maybe getting to Lake Washington to be able to take those classes?
It wasn't a short-term goal. It was more of, if we have a consistent schedule, is that something we could build towards?
Okay.
So it was a consideration.
All right, thank you.
Suniri.
I just wanted to start by saying thank you for the presentation. I think James and I are both students that are very involved in CTE, both through courses and outside of school. So it was interesting to see a presentation that directly reflected a lot of our experience. My question was, you shared like the CTE enrollment drop based on, I'm assuming the 6-period day was the main factor. And I guess to me it seemed pretty significant, like 36% I think was one of them. So I have 2 questions, but my first one is like, have you seen any effects of decreased CTE enrollment in like the student body as a whole, or has it just not been enough time to track that, or have you been hearing anything?
Not enough time to track it. It's been 1 year. So this is sort of our baseline. And you'll notice too, when you see the difference where we dropped in different areas. For example, when we look at, can I go back a few slides here? When you look at the drop that didn't really occur in skilled tech, arts, and trades, I can tell you why that is. And it wasn't because those courses, it's because most of those courses are dual credit with art, and a lot of our and art is still a requirement. So it's a very easy 2-for-1, while like our business and marketing foundations isn't. So it really has to do with just a reduction in the choices that students had to kind of meet all of those. So I'll be interested to see what happens. We had registration is just occurring, so those numbers will just be coming in, and we're going to keep looking at this. Great question.
I had another question as well. I know like the schedule is probably going to stay at 6 periods, but I was just wondering, like maybe do you have any ideas, or like are there any discussions going on of how to supplement like the decrease in enrollment or decrease for student opportunity through coursework for CTE, through like extracurricular opportunities? Like I know DECA is already super big at a lot of schools, but like Director Yoakum says, there's no agricultural education classes, or very few. Is there support that's provided for CTE extracurricular opportunities through this department, or is that through someone else?
If you're talking about extracurricular, like our career and technical student organizations, like those are available at each of our schools, and all of our program areas need to have a CTSO that is aligned. In terms of support, I want to make sure, I don't know if I'm answering your exact question, but we are going to continue to make sure that we are offering the courses that are high demand for our students and for industry and for those post-secondary opportunities. Do I think this chart will probably change? Yeah, it probably will. I will say we expect the drops that we saw are what we expected. When we did our projection, we're like, okay, we're losing a period. I think we're going to lose about 1/7 of our courses. And we did. That said, we have fellow districts all over our community, our area, that have 6 periods and have been operating. And we are in contact with them. My colleagues are in contact with them. That we have a strong network of really saying, how do we continue to do this? A phrase I like to use is we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So how do we really make sure that the anything we do is good and is really strong? Because we can't, we don't have 9 periods of the day. No one wants to be at school for 17 hours. But man, wouldn't it be fun if we could? Or maybe not. Did you have another question, James? Okay.
Director Richter.
on this same slide. I was just thinking about the math of it, honestly, and 1/7 is about 14%, but a lot of these are dropping more than 14%, which confused me. I mean, if you have 7 classes and suddenly you can only take 6, and maybe you say, I'm not going to take the CTE class, but then why are some of them so much higher? So you would probably have more information.
And yeah, basically it is because where we saw the biggest drops, it's because it was satisfying just a CTE or an elective credit. And so where when you add in that extra day, that extra period, I could have taken, as a 9th grader, here are the courses I have to, and I get to take this extra one, which is where we saw a lot of the really big drops, like in our business and marketing pathways. Where we didn't see that is in the skilled tech, arts, and trades, because many of those courses, again, if I'm a student and I need to take an art course and a CTE, and it's one course, I now have an extra spot available. Does that make sense?
Information that we don't have here are what are other courses that were prioritized, because students might be choosing music instead of this, or they might choose a world language. So we haven't looked at yet what are all the different variables for registration across content areas, but a student is going to make, to the point earlier, very individual decisions, and so they might not take business and marketing and another marketing and a skilled arts and this might be a place where they feel like I've fulfilled my requirement, and the other pieces of my day that need the consistency, like band or orchestra or something like that, they're going to make that choice. So it is kind of like, it's not an even 1/7 across all content areas. It's been very different based on student priorities.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah.
It just seems to me that the numbers, if I'm reading them right, are just saying students didn't just leave a CTE, they left 2. Are they not enthused with the pathway anymore? Are they focusing on other things? Things I can't tell from this, but just make me wonder.
Suniri?
I think I just had a question regarding some of the courses we're introducing. I heard you talk about some of the courses, and while they seem really interesting to me, I was just wondering what the justification, I guess, surrounding that is, given the decrease in enrollment, since earlier you said, for example, like you can't have a class with 20 students, right? I'm assuming that with the introduction of new courses, like combined with the decrease of students enrolling in CTE programs, that'll be spread apart in courses even more. So then I was just wondering, if enrollment's already decreasing in CTE, wouldn't it make more sense to like further strengthen or consolidate the courses we have right now?
That's a great question. That's actually what the focus is. For example, knowing that we are having drop enrollment in some of our computer science courses that used to be historically, get my computer science pathway, get my computer science degree, and there's a job waiting for me. We know that that's not necessarily the case anymore, which is why we're looking to say, okay, where does that pathway fit? And a course like AP Cybersecurity that is responding to demand in industry will, I want us to make sure that we're not saying, like, the enrollment piece is what does the student want, and where is that focus? And so how are we creating courses that our students can say yes, and it's going to lead me somewhere. So we will be continuing to look at what courses students then enroll in, and some others may go away.
James?
At least responding to the reason why maybe it's not dropping by 1/7 is when I think about my freshman, sophomore, and junior schedule, and I imagine if I only had 6 periods, the first class I would be on the chopping block would be my CTE credit, because I need every other credit. I need the English, I need math, I need foreign language, I need art credits. So it makes sense why, in my opinion, the numbers are not 1/7 decrease. It's more because if everybody thought like me, then it would be 100% decrease. So that's just how I reason it.
That's a great explanation, James. Thank you.
I'm curious, too, how much awareness there is, and this may be a question for our students, too, of the equivalency credits and the fact that I think it just clicked for me the sheer number of courses that are the twofers. Yes, I just had the conversation with my sophomore the other night about his course selection, and honestly, it's really easy to be like, you need English, you need math, and sort of this is the normal path. And now I'm really curious to go look and see, probably as soon as I get out of here, of like what those courses are and what other opportunities are open to him. So it is, not to put you guys on the spot, but is there awareness of that? Is that coming across, or how are we also equipping the adults around our students to be able to have those conversations of, you don't have to choose between science and CTE. Here, have you considered this that's maybe not the AP Physics, AP Chem that you're going to tend to go to, but you might be really fascinated by one of those 15 courses that I'm going to look up in a few hours here.
I'll just take a shot at answering this, and then if you want to add anything. I think, and I'll just speak for the students that I've seen and talked to in listening sessions, and just my friends going into STEM, the difference between I think there is awareness about I can fulfill my science and my CTE credit by taking this class, but I think the thing is that when you do take AP Physics or AP Chem or one of those things, it adds a level of course rigor to your transcript. So you're not necessarily fulfilling that same need. You're fulfilling a science credit, but while there may be content-wise a lot of course rigor in the other class, as it shows up on a transcript, it doesn't show up as an advanced class. So I think students are aware of that, but given the 6-period day, they have to choose whether to prioritize maybe a class they're interested in, or a class where they can consolidate 2 credits and be more efficient, versus a class that shows more course rigor on their transcript. So I don't think it's like an equivalent exchange, if that makes sense.
If I had to add, I think in the culture we have surrounding college applications, and I think whether or not I disagree or agree with it, it's a big focus from a lot of students to take rigorous courses because it looks good for the college admission readers. And I had a lot, and to answer your question, I had a lot of support from my brother specifically in choosing which class I should take, because he went through my school, Lake Washington High School. And so I think for a lot of students who don't have the support that I had, they rely on the counselors, and the counselors have so many students, and it's very hard to get specialized support. And so I don't think students have a lot of that knowledge surrounding which classes they can take for maybe dual credits, or which classes can maximize their opportunity in high school. A lot of times they just don't have the opportunity. So I think some of it is communicating and making that more accessible, making these resources more accessible. But I also just agree with Suneri with the other point, where even if they knew about it, they just would choose the more rigorous one.
Yeah, or whatever's more important to them.
Exactly.
I think my point was just they don't see it as the same thing. I think what would be interesting and really helpful is if we have more AP classes, or classes even just labeled as honors or advanced, that fulfill dual credits. Because I think students could take that without having to choose one or the other, and have more space in their schedule too. Have more CT credits, which we all love, so.
And just 2 quick notes on that, and that's why many of our AP classes are also AP and CTE dual, and also a reason why we brought on and did a shift in one of our positions last year to bring on Jill Brown, who also has a counseling and CTE background, to make sure that combination was sort of a unicorn to find because it really is what are those deep needs around CTE programming, and then what do our counselors also and our counseling program need to make sure that our students have that information. So,
Dr. Meekhoff.
I'm a little ignorant in terms of if we're talking about, is WANIC looped in on this, or are we talking about just the classes offered at the comprehensive high schools?
In this, we were not talking about WANIC. WANIC is, because it is its own special, amazing thing that would take another hour to talk about. So we wanted to bring in and just hear the different CTE programs within our middle schools and high schools outside of that of the consortium programs.
Got it. I was just going to mention, I have a student in the WANIC program who is receiving AP computer science credit as well as CTE credit. So there are opportunities for that AP.
I think then this is probably just educating more about that, because I didn't know that was possible through WANIC. So like James said, just working with the counseling department to make sure that all students are fully aware of all their options, like especially if they're having a specialized pathway of what they want to do.
Director Richter?
As long as everyone is, no more questions on that one, because I'm going to jump back actually to earlier what was Director Yoakum asked. And I think it's slide 15 with the different organizations, Washington Alliance for Better Schools, Chamber of Commerce. Apologies for bringing it up a second time. There's a very clear west side of the district, not the east side of the district pattern, and where those opportunities are located. And so just hoping for more diversity across the schools, and if you have any insights on barriers to getting it there.
I will say barriers, the number one is what will students register for? And that is, you know, if we build it, they have to come. And so that is, and how then do we say, okay, how do we ensure that we are getting courses that may meet some of that need? For example, the forestry one that is coming up. That is fantastic. We're excited that that will be hopefully in more of our schools. Great question, too.
I think Director Richter was talking about the business and industry partners and how are those chosen, selected, how are they located, is there diversity between the west side and the east side of the district? I think the answer to that is no, partially because of where business and industry is located in general. But I don't know if you could speak to any of the business partners that we have on the east side of the district as well.
This is just my second year with the district, and in a new position, a new partnership for me with the Washington Alliance. And so in our first go, we just actually focused on the Juanita learning community, so LDEB and Juanita, and really growing those deep connections to the teachers who are teaching those courses. And we did have 2 teachers do the Teach to Connect program. On the slide, you might see the asterisk there. Those teachers volunteered to do a summer kind of internship with those businesses, and those specialized field trips are because the instructor made that leap. So there are 6, so only 4 were specifically kind of determined by yours truly, and then next year we'll be shifting our focus over on the other side. So just trying to balance out a little bit of our craziness and logistics. But I think it's a really good question, and it's intentional for me that we're serving kids who are in the exploration phase of career readiness, and so we're really focused on sophomores in particular, and that's part of the mission of WABS. Also, they want to look at our college-bound numbers, and so those students who meet that socioeconomic status are a little bit more in that segment of our community, so we have a higher density there. So that's just our first run, but I think it's going to be even better next year, so thanks.
Any last questions? No? Thank you. This was super enlightening.
Okay.
Appreciate your time coming in.
Thank you all. Celebrate those CTE teachers and kids.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
All right, next item on the agenda, we're going to be Progress Monitoring Results 1, Mission of Lake Washington School District. Dr. Holman.
Yes, and so as the board knows, this is our second monitoring of Results 1, and in our first year of doing progress monitoring. And so as we look at how do we continue to go a little bit deeper into the data, provide some additional information to the board. We selected a couple of indicators for tonight. Deputy Superintendent Beebe has once again put together a PowerPoint that is next level. And but to be honest with you, what it does is it highlights our students. And R1 really talks about what is it that we want for our students as they conclude and exit our system. And our Results 1 monitoring is all about what are some of those indicators along the way that we can look at. And so one of the challenges we continue to face in progress monitoring is what data set do we actually use for progress monitoring, knowing that we could spend weeks and weeks on so many different data sets. So we've selected a couple tonight, and then Deputy Superintendent Beebe will go into really some of the responses as a system that we're doing. And then in my superintendent's report tonight, we're going to talk about school improvement planning and just some of the interconnected pieces and attempting to establish coherence through the system. And I think it's directly connected to just all of this work of working to get our students graduated and then graduated future ready. So that's the lead into to Scott and his progress monitoring.
One of my professional goals over the next couple of years is to give you a draft PowerPoint on Friday that's fully baked. And that hasn't happened yet because the work seems to always happen over the weekend. So you got a very drafty version of this again, but hopefully you'll recognize some of it. I did make some intentional design decisions, and all of the kids are from our graduating class of last year. So every slide has representation of our students who have graduated our system in the last graduating class in 2025. So I don't know why I felt that was important, but I felt it was important to have representation of our students since this is really all about their experience. First slide, just to give you some of the agenda. I signaled in the November 3rd first progress monitoring the content for today, and I'm going to hold to that for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is these aren't intended to be the full-blown R1 big thing, and I probably went overboard the first time with a full-blown thing. So I tried to consolidate a little bit for this. So you're going to see fresh off the press grade data. The semester ended like, what, a week ago grades were due? So I do have a recommendation that the second monitoring, we might want to push out a week or two next year, because Tim and his team pulled the data and got it to me, and I haven't had a lot of time with it, so we're sort of digesting that together. And then I signaled that I would bring to you a more detailed description of the plans systemically that we're working on around graduation data. I think we have taken a different approach this year than we've had in previous years in terms of intentionality around teaming around aspects of R1. So work has always been occurring, but the coordination of that work is more intentional this year than I think it has been in the past. And I'll speak to that. So these are your indicators for R1. The first three we talked about in the first progress monitoring. I did not bring data on the last one for tonight, so you'll have to wait for the full report for that one. But I am going to talk to you about these two. % of graduates completing at least one dual credit course. And we're going to dig into that a little differently because there's some nuance to why our data looks the way that it does that I don't think really is answering the questions that the board really is asking of that data. So we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. And maybe at some point in the future we have a conversation around that indicator and whether or not that's describing what you really are asking. And then the second one is just ninth graders credit accrual at the semester, because we know we can almost predict graduation by ninth grade success, because if you get too far behind, it is very, very hard to catch up. And that was before a 6-period day. There is some really encouraging data, though, around some of the concern that we had around when we go from 7 to 6 and opportunities for kids to pass. So first little bit of data. This is percent of ninth graders that passed all classes during semester 1. And this was pretty positive data. So I asked him and team to pull me last year's data, semester 1 of 24-25, and this year's data, semester 1 of 25-26. We've actually seen improvement in all areas with a few exceptions there in the middle. And I put yellow as a push because those are so close to the same number it could be a rounding issue. And the only group that we went down slightly, and even that's less than a percentage point, was with our students who identify as racially white. But in every other category, we saw improvement over last year, the last year of a 7-period day. So one of the things that we talked about a lot in that decision-making process was if we remove that extra opportunity, the stakes go up, and how will our students respond to that? And this data shows that we've had some positive response. Now, do we have work to do still? Yes, you still see some of the patterns that we see in other data in this data, also in terms of groups that are not achieving at the same rate or level as other groups. And so those persist in this data, but we've actually seen some improvement even in those areas. So I think our staff deserves to be celebrated a little bit for the work that they've done to help kids. If we can keep them on track, they're more likely to graduate in the first place. And I'll speak to that a little bit later. So that was pretty encouraging data. I did not honestly expect it to be that positive, so I was surprised by that. I did want to highlight a couple that showed pretty dramatic improvement, or at least one. I can't remember how many I did the little highlight thing with now. Hispanic Latino, students who identify as Hispanic Latino, saw a pretty big increase in percentage passing all courses year over year. Now, if Tim were, I have Tim on my shoulder right now, he would tell us that this is one data set, one instance. This is probably can't establish a trend from this, but it is a piece of positive news in the overall data picture as we look at R1. Apparently I did one. Why does this matter at 9th grade? Because we really can predict graduation rate based on 9th grade success, and you can start that at the semester because, and Tim told me, but I think it was 83% or 90%. If a student's not passing at semester 1, they're likely to not be passing at the end, and so they're starting off their high school career credit deficient. And one of the data sets I brought, because I thought it was interesting, and we've done some work around it, is the courses that are derailing kids at the 9th grade level the most, and I'll share that with you. The other piece that we've done some intentional work around is our schools all receive FTE for credit retrieval. Again, we would prefer they not have to retrieve the credit, so there's work I'll talk about that we're doing to intervene earlier. But we've put the opportunities for credit retrieval sooner in the student's career, so we're not waiting until junior or senior year where the kid comes in with, 12, that would be junior year, that'd be enough, but coming in with 7 credits or 6 credits and having to make up a lot of ground in a short amount of time. And I have some data to share with you on how kids are doing that, at least for one course. We did a little case study. So this data is count of students with an N, a no credit first semester of last year and first semester of this year. And you see all of the data didn't directly compare, so I gave you the accurate data for this year. Well, it's all accurate, but I gave you the data for this year, and if there wasn't a comparison, there's no comparison to last year. But you can see some interesting things. English 9, 9th grade English, for whatever reason, there's probably several. It is a language-dependent course. So students who are receiving multilingual services, it would not surprise me if there's a higher incidence of challenge for students. Well, there would be because it's a different language. But a pretty significant drop in students not receiving credit from last year to this year, but still that is one of the courses that is derailing students. Algebra 1, because we've done a lot of work that Dr. Rose has talked about with Math Pathways, we've seen a decrease in failure rate for Algebra 1 after first semester of this year. Is this the group? This isn't the group yet that's had the Math Pathways. 100%. Yep. Yeah, so continuing improvement there. I had questions about PE and art, and Dr. Holman and I talked about PE this morning, that some of that can be participation-based. You didn't wear the PE clothes or dress or whatever, and that sort of can impact. But that was interesting data. Now, we know about the Math Pathway work. We may not know that several of our comprehensive high schools, when we went from 7 to 6 periods, we reinvested half of the cost savings. The total savings was around $9 million. We put $4.5 million back into our high schools. And we allowed some autonomy on the part of the high schools to decide where best in their school to use those funds. Several of them put it into reducing class size at English 9, so that teachers had capacity to do more early intervention. And so again, it's one data point, one time, and so I don't know if we can say there's a trend established yet, but early signs are promising for that reinvestment. This was interesting data. This is numbers of students who, and I asked a question, I'll show. Numbers of students who failed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or all 6 classes. They are not, if you're in failed 2 classes, those 26 students, you don't also show up in the 1. You're in whatever total number you failed. This is a different issue. Arguably, you could include 3 in there. But this is a different issue. It represents about 1% of our total 9th grade cohort currently. And probably, if you think about, 26 students spread across 7 schools, that's a couple of kids per school. That's a street data needing to understand exactly what is going on for specific students. And there could be a myriad of reasons for that are no fault of the student, but certainly require some thinking on this part of the system. This is about 5.8% of our total cohort in that 1, 2, or 3 failed classes category. So this is some of the systemic work that's happening, understanding what's causing those end grades. Is it, we've heard a lot about grading practices tonight and some of the impacts of that for specific students. That could be part of the equation. Is it course selection? Could be certainly part of the equation. Is it workload and overload? We've heard a lot about AP coursework tonight also. We know from the high school day work for the last 3 years that our students, one of the reasons that we even engaged in the 7 to 6 period, or the 7 period day study, was students in the start times 4 years ago were expressing a lot of sentiment around workload and academic overload. And so that sort of stimulated some of that conversation. So we're doing some work now to try to understand some of that differently. And look across the system at patterns like English 9, if that is a frequent across, what could we do from a district standpoint to support some of that work? Things like differentiated staffing, we provided additional funding. The schools were able to use that to intervene with their own kids. And then Dr. Holman will talk about this in a little bit, but we're using our SIP plans differently than we have in the past. Every high school has a goal around graduation, and they are collaborating regularly. In fact, our last strategic work meeting, high school principals, middle school principals got together in job-alike groups, brought their SIP plans, shared their strategies, got feedback from each other, got ideas from each other. We're making that a regular part of practice now. That has not been the case. SIP plans have largely been lists of strategies. Those may or may not be good ones. They may or may not work. And we're trying to make that a more living document now, so action research around what's working, what's not working, with intent. Here's some more interesting data. So I asked, I thought the board, if I were the board, I would ask, well, how do we know how kids are recovering credits? So we took algebra last year, not this year, this is last year's, because obviously kids haven't recovered that credit yet. They just got their grades a week ago. To see how are students actually responding. So the 71 students in this cohort who weren't successful at the semester in semester 1 at Algebra 1, you can see the breakdown here. So a chunk of them retook it in summer school and passed. A chunk retook in 10th grade. Most passed, some still did not. A chunk retook in, took a lower level math class, functional math, and 3 concepts of algebra. I didn't ask them, but I assume they all passed those courses. Recovered credit during 9th grade, not during the summer, so this is the early access to some of that in-school credit recovery time. 3 took geometry. There's 3 over on the right, but there's only 2 listed in the end, but it's 3 because I consolidated 2 rows. And then there was a group that they just left. They're either transferred schools or they're not in our schools for the following year. It is not uncommon in highly mobile places with much higher mobility than we experience even in our schools with high mobility, that kids are showing up credit deficient, because even just that moving around sort of resets in every new place. But those are kids that they're not in our system the following year. So 3/4 of the kids that didn't pass the first semester, by semester 1 of their 10th grade year had recovered those credits, or that credit. So I thought that was an interesting piece of information relative to R1 that just paints a picture, at least in one course, of how we're able to help kids that have already sort of veered off the rails, and we're getting them back on before they get into 10th grade, or in 10th grade for some of them. I learned some things about dual credit in this process, which I appreciated. There are 6 kinds. AP courses are dual credit, college and high school. IB, which we currently do not have in our district, but ICS is working on it. Cambridge, Running Start, and then CTE dual credit, and I put the tech prep back in because we had a conversation in cabinet. What's the difference between CTA dual credit and tech prep? Tech prep is the dual credit part. So it is a designation for a CTE class that counts for dual credit. And on our transcripts, and that's super fun, on our transcripts, there are codes that go, course codes that align with each of those things. So this is an indicator that the board has seen before. I took IB off of this because we don't offer it. There were very small percentages, probably kids who have come to us with an IB course. And we tend to have very high dual credit participation. If you think about the reasons why, in 3 out of 4 of our high schools, health is a dual credit course. Health is a requirement. Everyone takes it. Most everyone takes it. We've created more flexibility with that now, so it may be interesting to see how that changes over time. But the indicator that we're using is sort of stacked to be at 100 or close to 100% nearly all of the time. I think the question that we were asking is who's accessing what, and is there variability in the different dual credit options that people are accessing? And so I didn't bring an indicator or anything. I barely told Dr. Holman that I was going to mention it this morning. He yelled at me. No, he didn't. But I think it's probably something worth considering moving forward, because I don't know that you're getting the exact information that you want. But I noticed some interesting things, or Tim noticed some of these as well and shared them with me. If you look at our students who identify as racially Asian, there's a much higher incidence of AP coursework in that than the overall group. We hear that as I was listening to our students next door and hear talk about the AP courses and this perception that you need just oodles of them to get into academically rigorous college. That is definitely a perception in our community that we experienced in certain aspects of the community. I remember at one school in particular with Director Guthrie 2 years ago that we were hearing that sentiment very loudly about the 7 to 6 period day and the disadvantage that perhaps would put our kids. But that was interesting. Kind of average, that same community with the overall average of Running Start. So we heard that a lot, that Running Start courses when applying for college, particularly really competitive application pools, there's a perception that those do not look as rigorous as AP courses. I thought this was interesting. So Black African American and Hispanic Latino. Black African American have a higher incidence of Running Start access. I'm curious about why. We had some conversation in cabinet this morning, purely conjecture around maybe it's the feeling of belonging in our schools and the feeling of autonomy and safety on some of the college campuses. They are more diverse in some ways, particularly community college campuses. That could be an attraction for kids. I think that would be a great question for our OE10 conversations next year. And then Hispanic Latino at a much lower rate of access than the overall. That could be for a myriad of reasons also. And then I just wanted to make sure we're not overlooking that the same or very similar disproportionality exists in this data set as exists in other data sets. So are students eligible for multilingual versus students not eligible for multilingual? There is a big discrepancy between access to any of these things, with the exception of Running Start, which I thought was interesting. And then our students receiving special education services. So as we talk about full inclusion and how we provide access to some of these kinds of courses for our students receiving special education services, there's a big discrepancy currently in who is accessing those and who is not, relative to receiving services or not. So, the third part of the presentation that I said I would bring back to you is more information on the systemic response. So how are we as a district centralizing response to some of these things and providing support for our schools to do that work? Before I do that, because I could not resist putting in a Seahawk thing, and I don't know why I started calling it this, but we have our R1 super team has formed. And much like the Seahawks, it is without ego. It is a flattened organization. We have met 3 times now, I think, 3 times in a couple of virtual, hey, do this kinds of meetings. And we actually have a written document now with identified practices that we are trying to change or influence in the schools. Many of those are, some of them are technical around counseling practices. Some of them are much more adaptive, and I'll talk about some of those in a little bit. And we are meeting regularly as an R1 super team to both collaborate around that work and hold each other accountable for timelines for implementing it. So one of the things I asked in our last meeting, I had to miss it because I was getting this eye operated on. That's why I have a bloody eye. I didn't get in a bar fight or anything. It's a eye surgery I had about a week ago. I'm asking them to, our team to commit to, I was a bouncer in college, so to commit to timelines, practices that we're changing or influencing, and what are the expected outcomes from these practices changing. I did not share that whole document with you. It's very much a working document. I would be happy to do a board brief about it and share it at a later date. So the levers that we are trying to pull, some of them you've heard about already. Credit accumulation and recovery. So if we can keep kids on track, that's the best strategy. If they get off track, getting them back on track quickly is a better strategy than accumulating a bunch and then trying to get them back on track. Early identification of students who are veering before they get off track for on-track graduation. That is happening now with regular data polls, with some work that Tim's doing to build dashboards for our counselors and our principals so they have access to that data in real time, right on their Skyward screen, so they're not having to go and find it somewhere else. We talked about this in the last R1 monitoring, that there's just some little technical stuff, like if we had a better system for tracking transfers out and we didn't lose track of some, that would have immediate technical impact on our grad rate. Is that the moral or ethical work that we all want to do? No, but it is important to be accurate. And so implementing some systems around that. We have a lot of students who come to us with transcripts from not just out of district, but out of the country. And in some cases, no transcripts at all, or transcripts that really wouldn't count as transcripts in our case. So how are we helping counselors with a more consistent protocol for evaluating those so that we are granting credit in every instance that we possibly can? And then when we get these really complex ones, what's the systematized response to that, rather than leaving it to Dr. Holman as the counselor at Juanita to figure out on his own with a couple of phone calls? Who's sitting down with him to sort of process through that together? And then looking at alternative grad pathways. So we haven't really publicized some of that in our district in the past. Open Doors program, re-engagement programs, GED programs, Running Start. I've worked in a lot of districts, and we're one of the few that actually says to kids, if Running Start is appropriate for you, go do it. Not to get rid of them, because we like the FTE in our district, but that is a really, speaking solely from my own personal experience, the courses my 3 kids took in Running Start actually met some of the requirements when they got into college. A lot of the AP coursework, while it technically did, they didn't get the same level of credit towards graduation. It sort of met stuff that wasn't necessarily part of their pathway. My son, who's in his second year at UW, technically has senior status, so he gets to register early, which is advantageous for him, but it's still going to take him 4 years in his program to go through college just because of the sequence of courses. So that sort of plays into, I think, there's a balance between take every AP course, in my opinion, take every AP course you possibly can, and look at some of these other alternatives if you're really trying to accumulate credit that's going to help you save money, which I would have appreciated in my own personal instance. Talked a little bit about this. We've got credit retrieval staffing at all comprehensive high schools. We have had for years. Schools are experimenting with different ways to make those more responsive to student needs. You've heard about the Flex Academy. I think we've done some board briefs at Juanita High School. I think LDUB has the RISE program, which is similar. I want to give a shout out to our partners in the back of the room that we've worked on an LOU, because when we use some of these, like Grad Alliance provides certified teachers that provide some of the coursework, even though our kids are also enrolled in a class that we have a teacher assigned to. But we want to honor our contract in terms of not outsourcing work. But our partners at LWA also know that kids need flexibility, and so they've been working with us to make sure that when we do these things, we are also honoring our contract. That is not always the case in every district that I've worked in, but it is a unique aspect of our relationship with our association here, that we can work together on things like that. We expanded summer credit recovery, and we're giving earlier access for 10th graders. So again, if we can get them back on track and keep them on track, that's the ideal situation. And you'll notice I've put leads. Those are the people with direct responsibility for leading and monitoring this work in our district. I'm assumed in all of them, but I don't do the direct work. Credit pathways, so we're developing central resources for those other alternative pathways, because what I think we're seeing in our, people don't know about them, and we don't have a centralized place where you can find out about them, including how do I actually do these things? If I've talked about my brother in here, my brother has a GED. It was my mother. She worked in schools for 30 plus years. She knew how to navigate the system. Not everybody has my mother to help them do that. So how do we provide different support. And operationalizing that so that our counselors have that at their fingertips rather than each individual counselor having to go find that information in their context. So we can do that centrally and share it with the schools. Alignment, these are more technical. So we know that when we started having the conversation from 7 to 6 periods, that the PE, I don't want to call it a waiver, what's it called? I always call it a waiver. It's not really a waiver. You still have to do stuff. But that was being inconsistently applied, and who had access to that across our schools was very inconsistent. So we've made that more consistent with expectations around, nope, here are the pathways to get your PE credit, and they should be consistent across the schools. And now that we've developed that, we can hold schools accountable for, and I don't mean accountable in the sense of, they're doing it all wrong, but here's the way that you can access that and where it's appropriate. We're meeting with counselors regularly. Johnny Fu's department, Charlotte Plaus, is the person who's directly responsible for that, along with Lisa and Jill, who were here earlier, to systematize these processes and procedures. And I talked about the 2-step transcript review so that it's more consolidated, saves labor on the part of the counselor, because that is all hand work sometimes, but if we could offload some of that and just know these courses apply or these kinds of courses apply for these things, and provide that information more consistently, that will help both our students and our staff with decreased complexity. And then having a place to go when you get these ones that are just really, really challenging. I talked briefly about this. So Tim and team have been working on data dashboards live in Skyward. That's a function of cumulative. And Tim, where we can solve process issues using a tool that we already own and that people are in every day anyway, that's a benefit organizationally in terms of efficiency and for the individuals. So Tim recognized that counselors are using bits of information from various sources, and he's able to consolidate those all in one dashboard for counselors right within Skyward and principals. Doing some additional training with both our registrars and our principals so that we're not making individual decisions that are counter to decisions that are being made in other schools. There's more consistency across. And we do have a goal to try to reduce those unconfirmed transfers, because that is an immediate impact on grad rate, because everyone that we can't account for counts as a dropout in our graduation data. Tim's made some progress. You've seen that come down over time. We think there's still room to move it further. This is my favorite graduation. I say this every time I see this picture, but it's our Transition Academy. So the why behind this is if we intervene earlier, it reduces dropout risk for our students. It also decreases stress, because there is nothing worse than heading into your senior year with multiple credits deficient. Creating consistency is a way to create equity across schools so that it doesn't matter which school you go to, you have consistent access to the various flexible options that we've created, many of which were in place prior to the 6-period day, but were not being utilized in the ways that they can be now. And I think I would commend Dr. Holman for granting the organization permission to start actually accessing some of those things. That's a shift in thinking for some of our staff too, so I wouldn't say we're 100% there yet, but we're working towards it. We believe more accurate data improves accountability for the whole thing. So if we have better data on transfers, that's better grad data that we provide to you. If we have better data on who is and who isn't passing at the semester and we can intervene earlier, that's better overall for the system and for the kids. And I don't remember why I put clear pathways prevent disengagement, so I'm just going to skip that one. Sorry. I would be remiss if I didn't say, and this connects directly with what our students were saying earlier, all of these things, or many of the things that we're talking about, are responses to what happens if a student is going off track. What really happens in the classroom every day is where we're going to make bigger improvements in some of those disparities that we see in our data. So making a dashboard in Skyward, while technically challenging, is a technical response. This work is adaptive. It is much longer, it is much harder, it is much more impacted by our own human frailty, because my practice is reflective of my knowledge and experience, and you're asking me to change that. That's really hard for people. Plus, you know how hard it is to break a habit, and practice is habitual. So we have been for years and will continue to do that work. I really liked that course failure many times is not about student effort. It's an instructional mismatch. And I think about that in context of my brother. My brother is very smart. He's never been a writer, but that guy could talk his way out of anything. And he can relate to anyone. And had he had opportunities to share knowledge in ways that he had strength, I think the outcomes for him in terms of his educational experience would have been very different. We have lots of kids in our system like that right now. Not necessarily like my brother, he's kind of one of a kind, but if our system could learn to be more flexible, our kids could show us differently what they know. Those don't always show up on tests like SBA, but they do show up in the experiences in our schools for kids. And then the last one, and I started getting loopy here Sunday night, and I decided to flip negative and positive space on this one image for some reason, but I liked it, so I kept it. I've spoken about this a couple of times. One of the intents with the Common High School schedule was intervention, and we thought of it wrong. We thought of it as a time. It is not a time, it is a practice. And it is embedded now in our Danielson framework, which is, yes, it is the evaluative framework that we use to evaluate performance. I don't say evaluate people. We don't evaluate people. People are good. We evaluate performance relative to the standards. You cannot be proficient or distinguished and not have adaptive instruction occurring in your classroom. Intervention occurring as a regular part of your practice in your classroom. I also want to say that the work that we are doing with our leaders and our teachers, unfortunately, that's the evaluation framework that we use. It was never designed for evaluation. It was designed as a way to take a very complex skill set, craft of teaching, and make it so that you could talk about it with common language, such that you could grow your practice over time into increasingly sophisticated levels of performance. It wasn't supposed to be evaluation. So while evaluation is a necessary component of the work, that is not the primary focus of that work. The primary focus is engaging our principals and teachers in ongoing reflective conversation about practice so that we can grow from wherever we are on that continuum. And I loved this picture of Jill and student at RHS last year. A key lever is the principal leadership in buildings and how they approach this work with their staff, how they're vulnerable in the work with their staff, how they come alongside their staff, but they're also establishing instructional expectations at the same time. Clear as kind. We don't want to hide the fact that we're all trying to improve our practice. We don't want to hide the fact that that is really hard work. And some days are better than others, but over time, we should be growing our teachers. And so we're investing a lot of effort into growing our leaders along the same work. So that's the R1 monitoring report for this. I don't remember what February, whatever today is, 9th.
Questions? Director Liberty?
It's not a question. Well, maybe it's a question. Thanks for highlighting the dual credit data. I've never, if it's been presented in that way before, it's never hit. So to me before, well, it has not. Great. I was going to say it's very stark. I mean, I know that the purpose of this is not part of monitoring, but for me it does. Part of this exercise informs how we can do our annual monitoring better, and that kind of laid bare for me that like our current monitoring of dual credit is sort of just turned into sort of like vanity metric that we have now, and where we can sort of trumpet it as a success, and I'm not really sure it's telling us. I'm now certain it's not really telling us anything. So I guess the question, I recognize that you told Dr. Holman about this somewhere between 24 and 12 hours ago, maybe less. If we were to change it, I mean, what some options? Just sort of thinking out loud. Have you started thinking about this at all? And like, if we were to, what would it look like? I mean, could the board be looking at monitoring? Could we just say, all right, we're monitoring disaggregated AP credit and running start credit, because maybe those are telling us something more. Are there other ways that we could look at it?
So results monitoring is different than OE monitoring. And so results are about defining what's the outcome that the board is expecting. And so we've had this conversation a number of times. So Scott, yes, he said he was going to bring it up today, but we've had this conversation a couple of times. This just felt like the right time to just push it forward. I don't think we're ready tonight to make a recommendation. What outcome do we believe we're working to achieve? This is a data set. It's telling us that our current monitoring probably isn't informing the board related to the actual expectation that we have. So we're not prepared tonight to talk about what do we believe that expectation should be related to these data. Because what I don't think we want is, all students participate in AP. All students participate in running start.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And so I want to be thoughtful about how we bring this forward. And so.
Thank you. I agree. I'm thinking about that in the context of, you're doing the work right now and reimagining the mission vision of the district too, right? And like that to me would inform, like those values that go into that would inform how we would monitor this as well, I think, and like what we would do with it. Really interesting. I have one more, but it's on something different, so I'll pass for now.
Director Yoakum?
I have a few, but I'll just start with one. Since the 9th grade credit, first of all, thank you. I feel like I need to say that. It has been very helpful, the past one, and then this one, just that deeper, in-depth look. Like, I'm just nodding along and smiling. I find it very fascinating. Thank you. And I really appreciate your PowerPoints. Always do. Okay, so since 9th grade credit attainment is our most reliable predictor for graduation, it appears that some of our high schools...
Can we pause on... Can I interrupt your question?
You may.
With that. That was actually my next question, which is 9th grade graduation our most reliable... Is that an accurate statement? Is it our most reliable?
I don't know that I could say tonight it's our most reliable. I think it is a reliable predictor.
Okay,
I'll pause.
Since 9th grade credit attainment is a predictor for graduation, it appears some of our high schools reinvested money into those classes that you say derail our students the most. Will this be evaluated in more depth? Meaning, if our end grades are decreasing in these schools that reinvested this way, will there be an effort to relook at our staffing model to reflect a prevention-first approach in 9th grade? Will you be kind of exploring that more?
I can't specifically speak to, so I want to see, I gave you the full, I haven't looked at the school level data to see, I don't know if it dropped in the schools that made that choice. So that's step one, is we probably need to look at that. And we probably need to look at over more than just one semester. But I think we're always interested in conversations around staffing models that are responsive to student need within the constraints that we live within. So the reality is, if you're going to fund smaller class sizes for, I'm just making this up, but 9th grade English and 9th grade whatever math, then you're increasing class sizes somewhere else, or you're adding additional funding into the mix, and that's what we have to balance. I mean, and we did that. Like last year, an example of that was we made the decision, we kind of had to make the decision to look at staffing for 4th and 5th grade classrooms differently than we have, because we were siphoning off K-3 class size reduction money to sustain the staffing model at 4th and 5th grade, which in practice was winding up with smaller than targeted 4th and 5th grade classrooms. None of us want bigger classes. And the reality is that the funding model is bigger classes at 4th and 5th grade than it is at K-3. So we made that decision to reallocate that funding back down to K-3 where it was supposed to be and decrease class sizes there, which also plays into that early intervention thinking. So I can't speak for Dr. Holman, although I seem to frequently, because I can't shut up, but I think we're always interested in how we can be more responsive to the student need.
Director Richter.
What? And just to throw out there for Director Yoakum, I mean, there was a lot of things that went on with 9th grade English last year, at least at East Lake. I know they changed the curriculum. They split some classes apart instead of LASS. So probably hard to dig into the data, I would assume, at the moment, because there's a lot of things going on.
That's also, though, Aspen, that's the work that principals are doing now, is having those conversations. Not that they haven't always, but it's more intentional now around, you know, what are you seeing with that? And I'm sure they're talking about the schools that have invested in those to see what they're seeing in terms of outcomes for kids.
Director LaLiberty.
So I thought that the statement around that it is a predictive indicator, or like an upstream, I don't know if that's the right term, somebody who's better data than me, some sort of upstream indicator of eventual completion of high school, that I think the theory is if a student, and I think my guess is the data doesn't support this, if a student is not passing a class in 9th grade, that's going to be somewhat predictive of upstream effects. That's really interesting. And we think about how we, again, continue to monitor, like formally monitor R1 going forward. Those types of upstream indicators are really interesting, because graduation right now in terms of how we monitor in R1 is just the high school, is predominantly a high school monitoring problem monitoring. But it's really, I mean, to get a kid across the finish line, we know it's K through, it's not just 12th grade completion, it's K through 12th completion. So like if there's a way when we continue to do this progress monitoring of trying to, like, I know I'm assigning research projects now, but of continuing to try to identify like what are those earlier indicators, meaningful indicators of eventual graduation that we can use, and maybe potentially the board can bake into results 1. So I know we've identified, so there's a question here. I know we've identified 9th grade credit. Are there any other, even anecdotally, of?
There's a body of research around this specific topic. I haven't looked at it in probably 8 years, but it's 9th grade credit accrual, success in a dual credit course.
Yeah.
That's where the indicator came from.
Right.
And it was at the time specific to a single dual credit course. And I think what we're saying is we're probably overinflating our data because of the health credit. Absenteeism, discipline rate, and then one that we don't have great agency related to, mobility. But those are, if I remember correctly, those are kind of the 5 key drivers. If there's others that I'm not recalling.
I would argue that there are some we've already baked into other results policies, like 3rd grade literacy. That is a predictor of later academic success. So, I mean, it's sort of, I don't know that you could directly correlate it to graduation. Maybe you could. But it certainly is a predictor of what's to come later. The math, 5th grade math, 8th grade math, both of those are probably predictive, because you're right. If you veer off course, even, if you're leaving elementary school and still not reading at grade level, that's challenging as the academic workload increases and the perspective or the perception that every student is able to read material, content material, becomes sort of an expectation as you leave. So there's also ways that we can intervene with that. I am really still curious about AI. I think right now it is a lot of promise without a lot of delivery yet. But things like being able to adapt content is one of those places that I think it's really interesting to see what might be possible here in the next year or two.
Director Yocum.
Thank you. It's not a question, but more of just a comment. So in regards to the instructional practice kind of that you ended on, I really appreciate the shift from reactive to proactive support and the acknowledgement that when classroom level intervention is strong, credit recovery demand decreases and equity gaps narrow through earlier support. So I acknowledge that the practice of classroom level interventions requires a big cultural shift with our secondary educators and a recognition that principals are the instructional leaders paving the way for that cultural shift. So I really just want to thank you for acknowledging that and presenting that, and that's kind of how we're moving that way, and really looking forward to seeing how the district measures and ensures that this shift is being consistently implemented throughout our secondary classrooms. Thank you for bringing that up.
Can I also just comment, there's different complexities at secondary level than elementary. I think about, as a former elementary teacher, it seems simpler. Your kids are with you all day, you teach all content areas, kids are used to groupings and things like that. Many of our secondary teachers have 150 students that track through their classrooms. So I absolutely, intervention as part of core instruction, and there's complexity, and so there's also learning and professional development and professional growth, and for our high school administrators as well, because many of them taught in a similar model of high school, and so I can appreciate the unique challenge. Teenagers aren't always available, even if they're sitting in front of you. So I just want to recognize the complexity that we are also now going to be asking of our secondary teachers to think about how to do this, because we know it's a best practice and we know it's complex at the same time.
And a requirement. I mean, this isn't Dr. Rose, I'm putting, because she's leading a lot of this work for our district, saying we're all going to do this because I said so. We are held accountable in the evaluative framework for adaptive teaching. It is embedded in what the expectation is, and that has changed. If you look at the old framework, it's very different from the new framework.
Director Meekhoff?
I had a similar comment as yours, and I think mine comes from lived experience. I worked as a social worker at an alternative high school, so I lived that life of scrambling at the end rather than that credit retrieval and early intervention, and it was not only chaotic but really ineffective.
Director Liberty.
Okay, one more lap on this. I can do this. I'm gonna make a request for future results one progress monitoring. I think it would be interesting to map and have some sort of metric of what is predictive in our district. What results data is predictive of student graduation that's further downstream.
So we could provide correlative data. We wouldn't be able to provide predictive.
Well, okay, yeah, that's what, yes. You know what I mean. Thank you.
If,
I recognize
if
that
correlative is what.
Well,
you understand what I
know. Yes,
because with every data element, there's 1,000 factors around it, and so but there's some key data that generally point to.
Yes.
So.
Predictive asterisk. Yes, that's what I meant.
And we'll have to talk with the team to find out what.
I know that the ninth grade was presented to us for a reason, and I'm certain that that is going to be amongst the highest correlated with that data with graduation.
Correct.
I suspect that there are other interesting downstream data sources that or reports that could be helpful for the board.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed going back and looking at the old R1 data, or I guess looking at old R1 reports, is that the ninth grade on track has sort of decreased since COVID, which kind of makes sense in context of lots of things have decreased in terms of academic results. But at the same time, our graduate rate has been ticking up. And so this, it's still pretty close. They're both rates are quite high. I think, ninth grade on track is like high 80s, and then grad rate, is in the mid 90s. But to me, that speaks to, we may actually be making a difference here of that a student today, the handful of students who are just looking at, who aren't seeing success, are less likely to graduate than the kids sitting next to them, but more likely to graduate than they would have been, 5 or 10 years ago. And so ideally ideally it's not predictive, not 100% predictive, right? Because otherwise, kids should just stop if they're not successful in ninth grade, and I don't think anybody of us up here wants that. So, what are we doing as a system to actually change that, to make that less predictive, maybe a little less cleaner for Director LaLiberty, but also better for our students, and having that belief that just because you weren't successful by the end of ninth grade, hopefully that number is decreasing, and we have a strong belief in those remaining students that they can still get across the finish line, and we can help them do that.
It's also why we report that 5, 6, and 7 year grad rate, because you may not be able to get there in 4, but that doesn't mean the system's going to quit on you.
Yeah, and I think that also speaks to the different pathways through, and I'm really excited to hear us really acknowledging that. I think I say this every time that we talk about R1, but I'll say it again because I think it bears repeating, which is that like LWIT, CEO, we see those as dropouts because that's how the state requires us to report that, which is fine, and we should always follow the law, to be clear. But to me, that's success. If we're able to guide students to a path, even if that's outside our system, that's what we're here to do. We're not here to make numbers look good. We're here to graduate students who are future ready. And so the more that we can do, because I think I was actually just talking to a parent over the weekend of a student who's on an IEP. And we were talking about these different options and trying to, we don't even know what, for some of these options, how does this impact IEP services? How does this impact access to transition services when students are on these alternate pathways? Because it's not clear. So the more that we're able to make those known to parents, to counselors, to all the adults who are guiding kids, and the differences between them, that's really, really important. So thank you for highlighting that. Any other questions? If not, I will now entertain a motion to accept the progress monitoring report for R1 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Was that a second, Director LaLiberty? Sort of, yeah. It has been moved by Director Yoakum and seconded by Director LaLiberty to accept the progress monitoring report for R1 as presented. Is there any further discussion, or did we get all our comments out in the question section?
Oh, yeah. Whoops.
It's all good. All right, all those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Beebe and Dr. Holman, for bringing all this forward. Do we want to take a 5-minute recess or push through? Okay, let's do a 5-minute recess. We'll recess till 9:26. Superintendent report, Dr. Holman.
Yes, and I gave a preview to it, and Scott also gave a preview to it as we were in the R1 progress monitoring. Tonight in your consent agenda, you were going to have school improvement plans on that, and so thought it would be appropriate to talk about just some of the work we're doing related to school improvement planning. We delayed that for the next meeting for approval, but still thought it would be good to provide an update. As we've been thinking about this work, it really has been around alignment. Because if the board has results policies and our schools are never thinking about, how are we working towards those results policies, the likelihood of us achieving our goals in results is essentially zero. And so while we didn't take the results policies and just overlay them into school improvement plans, our key performance indicators, our KPIs, are directly related to our results policies and the goals, the strategies that our schools are working on are directly aligned with the KPIs. And so Dr. Rose, I'm going to say she's going to partner with me on the presentation. Dr. Rose is going to provide you a presentation related to school improvement plans and just all of the work that's going on right now with our leaders. Because I can tell you, it is very easy for a school improvement plan to just become something that sits, on a shelf, and making them, living documents and meaningful for our schools and our leaders is really the intent, because having them engage with each other, think about these goals, circle back with one another related to their conversations, be critical friends of one another, that really is how things come to life. And so Dr. Rose will provide us with an update related to this.
Okay, thank you. And feel free to jump in anytime. So all of the questions that you had about the R1 monitoring, many of them are addressed in how we think about our school improvement plans. So when we're thinking about the fact that all high schools are focused on credit accrual for ninth graders, that is part of their school improvement plans. Like, this is the work that ideally a school improvement plan is supposed to do, is to ensure that a school is focused on their priorities and ideally in alignment with district priorities. So what I'm going to provide you today is a bit of a general overview of school improvement plans, some of the adjustments that we've made here to really focus the power of them, and some slides that we'll be presenting tomorrow morning at 7:30 in this room, should you care to join us. For our meeting with our secondary principals, will be in here tomorrow morning working on some of these things. And I thought, when we were talking about school improvement plans, I thought, what better way to really show the work that we're doing and how it's directly aligned to the KPIs and to our results policies than to show you literally what we're going to be talking about in the morning. So a school improvement plan is part of a legal requirement. So there are WACs that outline what a school improvement plan must have in it. So I've linked those in. And the goals for school improvement plans are there, and what we've done over the years is have a school improvement plan template, a SIP template, that helps school leaders write a plan in collaboration with their staff that meets these legal requirements. And in many places, it essentially has felt like what Dr. Holman said, that the plan is something that's written up, it's a compliance, and we set it aside, or we work on parts of it. Over the years, we had also recognized that schools are individual places, and we had given a lot of leeway for schools to say, in our context, this goal is something that's really important to us, we want to work on that. And we're really thinking about that because the alignment piece is really important as we're thinking about the questions that came up, or the thoughts that came up earlier, of how does elementary align with middle, align with high school, align with graduation. Those are really important to have that articulated, not just in terms of the curricular resources, but in terms of thinking what's the work that schools are doing to make sure all students are on that pathway that's a K-12 pathway, not a high school pathway. So effective plans should have these indicators, and these are straight out of what the WAC and what OSPI say. So these are the technical pieces of it. When we met in August, well, some of the work that's happened with SIP plans over the past couple of years is we started to really ask leaders to think about and work with their staff to think about not just kind of the broad goals of third graders will improve in their reading scores, but to really think who are the students who are not achieving, and to really focus in on the students that are furthest from educational justice, and have those students in mind as we wrote plans for our SIPs. And so that was a shift from that's been over the last several years as we developed our principal PLCs and really wanted to attend to. Overall, as a district, we're really successful, and if we look at overall data, great. And we wanted to be more thoughtful and recognize that as we really target our work, that means that all students will be more successful because we are focused on the students that have not traditionally been successful. So when we met in August with leaders, we asked them to reflect on, so how did it go last year? Like, what are the thoughts that you had as you focused on the students furthest from educational justice, as you thought about that small group of students that you met with and observed with your principal PLCs? What was the difference that you saw in your SIP reflection in August? So these were the things we asked leaders to think about. We had made some significant changes to the structure of SIPs. And the reason that we did that was they were, as I said, schools had more leeway to pick what their goal was. And they were all in alignment with our district mission and vision. But as we really looked at our strategic framework, we recognized we need to really narrow and we need to pick the things that matter most. Like Nyla said, we can do great things, but we can't do everything. And we really need to focus in on what are the things that we want to be able to have more correlative understanding of. This action on our part equals this impact on students. And so we focused each school level focused on 3 different sort of buckets of SIP goals that are focused on the KPIs. And I'll show you those in just a moment. But it's essentially, it's in K through 8, it's literacy, math, and SEL. And at high school, it's an SEL goal, credit, 9th grade credit accrual, and graduation. And so what that translates to in some of our elementary schools, so 3rd grade, we've really there's those 3 goals, and we're really focusing on literacy. In middle school, we've gotten even tighter. So the math goal is success in algebra by 8th grade. And what we've been finding, and I think you saw some of that in the general grade data that I talked about 2 weeks ago, and as we're looking at pass rates, when we really focus in on what's important, we are seeing a correlative difference. I can tell you from street data from school principals that as they talk about their work, as they really focus in on their SIP goal is credit accrual at 9th grade, that kind of focus has led to impact that they're seeing in terms of teacher practice that I think we're seeing show up, and we're watching to see if it shows up in grades. Some of the conversations I've heard principals talk about, like at the January meeting that Scott was talking about, was really looking at what model of co-teaching makes a difference to credit accrual, specific credit accrual at 9th grade. What kind of co-teaching makes specific difference to students being successful in algebra? And then, if they're not, what are the responses that we have for that? Like, is it a unit test that they didn't pass? Is it something that we can help them make it up in the 2nd semester of 8th grade? Like, as we really focus in on very specific goals and we put all of our brains to it, we are more successful with that. So we have narrowed to say each school level has these 3 priority areas, and we're getting tighter about what work that is in each of those priority areas. We've continued to provide just-in-time and integrated learning, and what I mean by that is really thinking about our work in implementing the new Danielson framework is really tightly tied to, as Scott was saying, thinking about what kind of instruction supports student learning and our priority areas for each school level. So it's been really just in time as we're thinking about like a deep dive into Danielson, literally the same day that we are talking about our school improvement plans and asking building leaders to reflect on what elements of Danielson will show up in instruction and what you want for your students, and how are you thinking about working with your staff around those. We've also identified data and strategies to progress monitor over the year. That was part of the work we did in August. We did it again in September and October. We did it in January, where we're really thinking about just like we're asking our teachers to basically do student growth goals with our students, how are we asking our principals to think about what is your growth goal for this time period where you can really make a difference in what's happening in your building, and asking them to work with each other on that. The feedback from our building leaders has been so positive of just working with each other and collaborating really stretches what they're thinking about, and they're able to say, you're doing this, me too. Let's partner together on this strategy, and let's literally from the January strategic leadership meeting, I know that several principals were setting up learning walks for their teachers in algebra classrooms because they were like, my teachers need to see that and talk to your department chairs about that. One of the other things that we did that's different this year is in our old SIP model, family engagement used to be a paragraph at the end of the SIP plan. And we really thought about family engagement as different in each area and needs to be a targeted strategy that is focused on student achievement. So family engagement, and we've done some professional learning this year around it, is not just how many newsletters go out or how many activities happen. Powerful family engagement specifically leads to increase in student achievement. So we, instead of having it broken out as a paragraph at the end, we've really worked with our building leaders to think about how does family engagement show up in each area. And I will say, when you see the SIP plans this week, they're going to be a work in progress. You're going to look at them and you're going to see some places where we're going to grow and align some more. You're going to see some great things. You're going to see more alignment than you've seen in the past. One of the other things that we did was that our school improvement plans used to be due in December. And we looked at that deadline, at that date, and thought we really need that to be earlier. Like, we need to have an understanding that a plan for the year needs to be revisited and change. Just like, what data do we have that shows what we need to change in terms of instruction, just like we would think about with a lesson. So we changed the due dates to allow for more of a dynamic cycle of inquiry, response, and planning. So the deadline for a draft was October 31st. We engaged with our leaders at that next meeting with each other to refine, and then had the deadline for the final due after that. And we continue to work on the final. So what you'll actually see is still a working document, because tomorrow morning at 7:30 we're going to be engaging with each other again to think about what's working and how do we adjust based on our learning and our focus. And we're continuing to engage in that learning. So I'll come to the specific learning in a moment, but the overall school improvement plan, this is what you'll see, where there's a bucket for elementary through 8th grade or through middle school of literacy, mathematics, and social emotional learning. At elementary, you're still going to see a little bit more variation in what the literacy goal is, and we're thinking about that. How do we really have schools be able to have flexibility to respond to what they see as their important goal, and really know, like, we've identified 3rd grade reading at grade level by 3rd grade, all grades, but 3rd grade is the key one, is key for us. So we're working on what that balance is with those goals. Then at high school, you can see everyone has 9th grade credit accrual, everyone has graduation, and then social emotional learning goal. Social emotional has a little bit more flex in it, but graduation and 9th grade credit's not a flex at all. Middle school, the math goal, like I said, is a success in algebra by the end of 8th grade. And then what you'll see in the plans is really thinking about, like, what is the plan for each area, and breaking it out into specific actions. And we're working on what that looks like. So right now it's a one-pager that looks like this, but really what we're asking people to think about is strategy mapping and being specific in our planning, where we think about way over on the right, there's our vision for student learning experience, that we then backwards map as we think about, like, what's the satellite data that might be there is our SBA scores, or maybe FAFSA scores, or first semester, second semester grades. And it would also be students feeling successful, students having a sense of belonging that are connected to that achievement. And then we backwards map, so what does the instruction look like to get there? What do teachers need to do in order for that instruction to be in place? What do they need to learn for that to be in place? So essentially a logic model that is connected to our school improvement plans to really think about how are we streamlining, focusing, and narrowing to have greatest impact. So what's happening, now I'm going into the slides that we will review tomorrow. We are going to walk our leaders through just kind of helping draw that through line of our work in Danielson and Danielson implementation, thinking about equitable outcomes for kids and how it's connected to the school improvement plan. So in August, we started the Danielson implementation. All schools had some time to do data review and focused around our KPIs for where are the areas of opportunity and need that we did. So we did that in August as part of our district leadership team 2-week time period. Then in September, we shared the adjusted school improvement plan format. We got deeper into thinking about Danielson and how it shows up in classrooms. And then more into October, we added in SIP goals. We continue to work with our level leads, which are building leaders at each level that help give us input on how things are going, what their needs, what building needs are, and give voice to our building leaders. Then in November, we got again into thinking about how our school improvement plans are playing out. So each part of this is really thinking about, like, not just rewriting the same thing, but really refining what is our impact and adding additional learning to think about how are we having the impact that we want and how do we know. So we engaged in some learning with Dr. Mapp from Harvard around family engagement. That's family engagement, like we said, is a really important part of our SIPs this year. And so we engaged in professional learning and gave folks some time to refine their SIP plans based on that learning. In December, we came back again and really got into thinking about how are we coaching teachers on having high expectations and consistent expectations for all teachers, whether they're on comprehensive or focused observations. And I think to Dr. Holman's point, or maybe it was Scott's point, thinking about the Danielson framework is set up to be a wonderful professional learning self-reflection framework. And we use it as an evaluation tool, and that's what the state has given to us. So we've really been thinking about how do we not have it be like, got my observation check done, but really think about this is an opportunity to do a deep dive into components and elements of instruction that are wonderful and really help us reach our goals for our kids. So that was our goal in December. So January, we came back in for mid-year check. We did a whole protocol with our building leaders to really think about, like, what data are they seeing to show that their SIPs are where they have a bright spot and where they have a place to really shore things up. And then we got some more feedback from our level leads on that planning. And we engaged with our level leads in thinking about not just what are we doing in February, but what are our outcomes for the year and what should we be planning on for August 2026 when we're coming back for next year. So this is another slide for tomorrow, and we're going to talk with our leaders again about our work tomorrow in going that next step with family engagement in our time in our strategic leadership is really thinking about feedback that we've had over the year from these meetings. After every meeting, we talk about, like, we ask folks what we were learning, did what we did meet your learning goals, what else do we want to do with it? Level lead feedback. Thinking about the Danielson framework, thinking about our adjustments to the SIP specific to family engagement, and then bringing in, we had some learning with Dr. Mapp. How are we really thinking about putting that into play to have deep family engagement? And the focus of that is thinking about student learning. So this is the slide they will see. January, we said that we were going to work on SIPs, and we promised you time in February. You worked with 2 different colleagues to talk about what your work was going to be. Here's your accountability partners. We're diving into that conversation tomorrow to help each other achieve our goals and be accountable to our work. The intended outcomes for our meeting tomorrow is to go back into best practices for family engagement. Think again about data and family engagement strategies identified and related to the SIP. Collaborate with teammates and peers and identify one engagement strategy to strengthen. And in that collaborate column, so today's Monday, we're talking about this at the board meeting. Tuesday is our strategic leadership meetings with our secondary in the morning, elementary in the afternoon. And on Wednesday, our building leaders will lead professional learning for all of our teachers. That will have many of these components that they've been working on from the SIP as part of the LEAP learning that they'll engage in on Wednesday. And so that is our goal, to have this coherence and this focus, be able to think about our school improvement plans are going from the R1 data, the R2 data, and thinking about how does that work come alive in a very focused, strategic way as part of the school improvement plan process in a building, where everyone in the building owns part of that school improvement plan and knows how they're making what impact that they need to make with that. We also called out, and we'll do this tomorrow, is really specifically, like, where does family engagement show up in Danielson, and how to support that, and then have the LEAP integration. In the PowerPoint, there are some links that you can see some of the resources that we're including for our leaders tomorrow. We're actually giving them, they'll have a kind of a menu where they can think about, like, what are more of the research-based practices that they could pull in, so we're not recreating wheels. We're going back to learning that we've had and resources that exist. And we're thinking really about moving along the continuum from Dr. Mapp of family involvement to deep family engagement to the purpose of student achievement, which is where it ties back to school improvement plans. So this is one of the things that will happen at the end of the meeting. The schools will come back together and think specific to family engagement. What are the bright spots, where they want to strengthen, what feedback do they need, and they will work with each other to be able to give that critical friend feedback. So next steps for us thinking about the SIP is we've made some really great strides in alignment and in thinking about if we're all working on the same thing, then we can really help each other be smart about that. We've targeted our SIPs to thinking about the KPIs that we think are really important to our student achievement. So we'll continue that progress monitoring collaboration through this year. We will continue to think about narrowing and prioritizing because, to quote Niall again, we can do some things really well, but we can't do all the things. So we have to decide which ones that are important to us and how we're finding success in those things and bring it together. We'll continue to ensure alignment and coherence of professional learning and SIP goals and do, like we've done this year, I really want to call out professional learning and the equity department and student engagement for designing professional learning and elementary teaching and learning and secondary teaching and learning, for designing professional learning together. So we used to have like 15 minutes of tech integration and 30 minutes of literacy and 20 minutes of SEL, and there's your hour of professional learning. And that is not what we do anymore. We're much more focused on integration in a way that makes sense and help teachers be able to move their learning along. We will continue to identify additional strategies and data to inform work. The R1, R2, R3 data is so high level that it's hard to use that for progress monitoring. We're working on it, we're trying. But thinking at the building level, they need to be able to think about like how are they knowing that strategies are really working. And that's where strategy map comes in, is thinking about what are different ways that we are understanding and kind of playing out the levels of success. And we'll continue kind of that cycle of inquiry focus and process that we're using with schools, focused on student learning and achievement at the school level through the SIPs, and the district level through our monitoring reports and through additional street level data. So that is the work we've been doing on school improvement plans.
And so as you all remember, well, some of you remember, some of you may not, Dale Cody, he had been working on really kind of updates and work related to the SIP, handed that off to Jen, and you can see just the depth and additional kind of alignment that we're attempting to achieve, all in service of accomplishing really rigorous goals for our kids. So thank you.
Yeah, one last comment kind of to that is our executive directors of schools use the SIP template on a regular basis to have individual conversations with our building leaders, like really just to think about how can they thought partner with them. So that's part of their, they go to schools just about every other week. They're at a school, so a school gets a visit just about every other week from their executive director of schools, and this is part of the conversation. So it's really powerful for them as well.
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is school visits and community affairs. This portion of the business meeting of the board is an opportunity for any board members to inform and provide updates from school visits or from organizations or groups they engage with on behalf of LWSD. Are there any updates from the board? Director Richter.
I know there are other people here who also went on school visits, but I'll do Rose Hill Elementary first if anyone's interested in that. So myself, Director Yoakum, and Director Meekoff, plus cabinet staff, some of cabinet staff, attended Rose Hill Elementary school visit. First one of these is elected, so hopefully I give you guys information you're interested in. We were greeted by principal and the associate principal, who are both new to their roles, they explained, and new as a joint leadership team. Both seemed to bring a lot of passion and love for the job to Rose Hill Elementary. The visit was an informational presentation that they gave, and then followed by a tour of 5th grade and kindergarten classroom areas. My takeaways from the presentation side was that this leadership team was very passionate, very focused on taking what they're saying is an already great school and then working to make it even better. Continuous improvement, do love it. They went, in explaining what they were doing, they went directly to the district's current strategic framework and the district's new profile of a student. It was interesting. They had kind of rephrased and re-envisioned both a little bit, and I think in ways that maybe resonated better with the building staff or with students or both. So it was interesting to see how they had taken those concepts and then put them in a phrasing that worked for their school. The leadership team also kind of touted a lot of the cross-functional collaboration they're doing. So they're not just limiting themselves to grade level teams. So during a leap day or their morning meeting, essentially they would get told, okay, staff, today we're doing grade level, or today we're doing vertical alignment teams, or we're doing topic teams, or something more ad hoc. And both the principal and the associate principal were really speaking with a lot of pride about their staff and the collaboration that the model was bringing forth. And they also were very clear that the Rose Hill Elementary culture was really like striving to demonstrate excellence. Teachers were really into this, etc. They also emphasized that they were proud of their student behavior in a very positive sense, with strong classroom cultures and traditions of having students self-manage. And you guys are in luck. It's late, so I'm not going to bore you with facilities details, except I will note they did say that they in particular did not have declining enrollment this year. Since winter break, they said they'd had 20 new students, in fact. When I asked, they said that there was a housing development nearby that was contributing to growth, so hey, there's one anecdotal data point about housing and school enrollment. They also said many of their new students were MLL students. They said they had a very diverse community, 46 languages, 136 MLL students. And we did see some of that when we went to the classrooms. We got to visit 5th grade and kindergarten. 5th grade was during a math lesson. It was on decimals. Kindergarten was like during reading and phonics and snack time. It was very impressive to see how closely aligned the 5th grade classrooms were. So we'd go in one, and then we'd go to the next one, and they'd be on the same slide, or transitioning to the next slide. So it was very synced. There were stylistic differences between the teachers. One of the classrooms in particular was using a technique called building thinking classrooms, which was very impressive and fun to watch. It was really engaging all the students. I think we all commented on it later, regardless of their mastery level, and honestly bringing the learners who were the least secure in their knowledge, like really into the conversation and getting them learning. Or to put it another way, kids were getting to stand on their chairs during class and they were having a ball. So, we also saw examples of inclusion with special ed students and technological and classroom MLL supports, so that was great. We finished off in the kindergarten classrooms. Those ones were less aligned with one another. One was having story time, one was doing some phonics, snack time. But it was really cute to see the little ones, because mine are really big now. So, and they were really focused in on their work. They didn't care. There were these other adults wandering around them. They were listening to the story. So that was the visit. It was really great to go and meet the leadership team and see the classrooms, and just a thank you to Rose Hill Elementary for having us.
Director Meekhoff.
That was a great summary. So we visited Rose Hill in the morning, and then in the afternoon, Director Yoakum and I and some district staff went to Ben Rush. I'm just going to read right from what I wrote. Ben Rush has a population of 590 students, 166 of which are MLL, and 61 receive special education services. I appreciated the opportunity to observe students across learning and play environments. Something I really enjoyed was I got to go out to recess, and they've made a really intentional decision to have different age groups. And so they had kindergarten and 3rd grade when I was out there, which I think creates some really natural opportunities for mentorship and connection with different grades. I'll mention their beautiful wooded area that Rush is lucky enough to have. I know can create some supervision problems, but is really beautiful. I was happy to see that the competition on the tetherball courts is just as stiff as when my student was a kindergartner there. During the visit, I was able to hear about the inclusion practices in place for MLL. This is a program that Rush has put a lot of thought into, and they planned on showcasing this during our visit. But they had some staffing changes, I think some subs that decided to pivot. Knowing about their intentional practices for ML learners was helpful context in terms of understanding how the school is thinking about meeting diverse student needs, and I'm interested in going back and seeing that in person. I also had the opportunity to observe students in special education environments, and for me, I think this experience really reinforced the importance of continuing to have conversations around inclusive education in our district, especially as we reflect on how it aligns with our shared values and goals. So I enjoyed my afternoon there. I learned a lot, and I'm grateful to the staff and students for welcoming me.
Director Yoakum and I went to Lake Washington High School on, she's looking at me like I'm crazy. It was January, not December, January 28th, I think. It was a Wednesday, to meet with Representative Del Bene, who was in town for a visit. She was going and she went on to visit some classrooms, met with the AP Gov students there and so on, but we got... yes, that's right. She was on Kang News, and so we were the precursor to probably a much more exciting day for her. But we did have the opportunity to sit with Dr. Holman as well, and just talk about what's going on in the district and some shared areas of overlap. Quite a bit of talk around immigration and sort of what's going on with that and the different perspectives that we're seeing in our different roles. And then also at the end, which I appreciated, she just kind of asked, how are our students doing? And Dr. Holman said, our school board directors will answer that. So we fumbled around, and but did having the opportunity to talk with her about some of the trends that we're seeing up here, and to just hear her interest in that. So thank you to Representative Del Bene for coming and experiencing our school. And we also, I guess that was our second thing that day, because in the morning, the two of us plus Director Meekoff were at the Superintendent Community Leaders Breakfast. I think I got that right. Which was here in this room, lots of different community leaders, shockingly. And always a great event. There was a lot of talk around inclusion and some of the work that's been going on in our district there. And also just a great opportunity to network with people who you don't always get the chance to sit down and talk with. So thank you to all the community leaders who joined us that morning. Director Yoakum.
I came here and I was like, I've done nothing. And I kind of felt this way of like, I'll have no updates because there hasn't, I was like, oh yeah, there are all these things that like even in the past 2 weeks. And so off the top of my head, I did speak at the PTSA, their monthly meeting, and I kind of have been using those opportunities for more education, I guess, educating on how the board works, policies, how funding works, and kind of shifted to talking a little bit about like the funding tension in Washington State. And I think it was really just sparked by reading social media posts, not just in our district, but many districts around levies, and because a lot of ballots are due tomorrow. Yeah, so that was, it was just a shift that like, I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions around what levies fund. Dr. Holman gave a presentation on the levy again, and I feel like you can probably do this in your sleep. But I did have a slide that I think worried Dr. Holman at first, and it was a balance scale, and there were a lot of gold coins on reality. And he's like, that's not how much money we have, right? It's like, no, that's how much it costs in reality to fund a school. And on this side, this is what our funding model provides, which is a lot less. And even if we put a few coins on for the levy, it's still not going to balance out. So just kind of explaining a little bit more of the tension and clarifying the reality coins. That was basically it. I think we heard from Lake Washington Schools Foundation, and they kind of went through some misconceptions around what their foundation does. Yeah. Oh, and Dr. Holman spoke about the Seahawks flag flying, and I feel like there was one more thing that you talked about. Not good.
Just how we respond to student walkouts and just the protocols that we have provided to our schools.
Thank you. Yeah, and I believe all of that was really informative for the PTSA leaders who were present.
And I think one last thing, boy, this community affairs, yes, there has been a lot going on. Director Meekhoff and I last Thursday attended the Lake Washington Schools Foundation, their monthly board meeting, because we're going to be sort of co-liaisons, and bringing her on board now that she's here. So she got the chance to introduce herself. And I was actually standing outside trying to get into the building. It was karma. Yeah. Yes, after we deserted Director Meekhoff outside during our last study session. So yes, a little bit of karma. But so I came in at the last minute and gave an update on some of the things that we've been working on. And then they've been going through the different programs that they sponsor, which has actually been really informative for me to just hear how some of the specifics around how they're integrating in with our schools. So this particular presentation was on inclusive libraries and on that program. And it was great to hear about some of the work that's been done, the impact. It's been a multi-year project. I won't give it away because the other thing we talked about was the Be the Bridge event, I think that's right, which is LWSF's big fundraiser for the year coming up. I believe it's March 28th, 26th, I was close. And you should all have invitations to that if you're able to join from the board perspective. And obviously it's open to the community as well. Yeah, always great to spend time with that group and very appreciative of all the work that they do in our schools. All right. Next, committee updates. Do we have committee updates? No, we've just been doing all community affairs. I do have a committee update. The Math Curriculum Adoption Committee met on March, I'm doing December? My goodness, it's late. It was January 29th. And they came out of that meeting with a recommendation for a new secondary math curriculum, which is Amplified Desmos is their recommendation that they are putting forward. That then needs, so that was, and it was nearly unanimous. So really exciting to see the support of that group. That I believe goes to IMC first before it comes to the board, but that's a big step forward to get down to this one recommendation. Lots of positive feelings. I will share too sort of the three gaps that they identified, which I think is also really good to think about. Wanting more resources around practice and procedural fluency for students who need that additional practice in order to really grasp concepts, and then also professional development and coaching, the resources for teachers to effectively implement this curriculum. So just a little sneak peek of what's coming this way, and I appreciated just all of the dialogue, the really open and honest conversations, the great deal of care and thought that went into making this recommendation. It was fun to meet too. They had, I believe, 3 community members on that committee who all spoke at the end about basically kind of like our students did earlier today. Wow, I had no idea that this much care and thought went into these decisions. I thought, they just kind of materialized out of thin air, but for them to get to see that was really cool. So thank you to the committee for the work that they've put in. Thank you for really being honest about those gaps. That's what I was listening for, because if we're not honest about those, then we can't work on filling those and on providing the very best experience for our students. Yeah, that's really exciting news to be able to move that very big adoption forward. No other committee updates? No? Okay. Then the board plans to meet next on February 23rd, 2026 with a 5 p.m. study session and a 7 p.m. board meeting. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the February 9th, 2026 board meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved by Director Yocum and seconded by Director Meekoff that we adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by voting aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, hearing none, motion carries. This meeting is adjourned at 10:06 p.m.